Hitman's not as cold as he thought.
Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast on Wednesday, the 29th of December, 2021. I'm your host, Dan Train. Joining me today, Zachary Burgess.
Rob appears to have had a plane crash on his way back from Mexico.
Robert Kemp.
Yes, I did. I hurt my head.
Mexico is very close by these days.
It is, yeah. It's like a 2-second flight.
The anti-social distancing. Got real close for some reason.
Yeah, it's quite good in a way if you're a taco fan. Now those tacos are real close.
You're a taco fan.
Yeah. Or big hats.
Isn't Ben Affleck back together with Jennifer Lopez?
Is he?
Yeah, so I heard.
Oh God, no! You're
Celebrity
referencing
news.
that South Park joke, aren't you? Okay.
Yeah, taco burrito.
Oh dear.
Okay. Yeah. She's not Mexican at all, is she?
No?
It's just so stupid.
No, she's not.
At all. Not in the least. Stupid.
Well, I guess that's how Forza. Now we know how Forza Horizon 5 was made, right? It's like if Mexico and UK are real close to each other. It's like
What, they went from one to the other?
Yeah.
Just walked over there in like 2 seconds.
some easy location research.
Yeah. Do you think they just pick where they're going to do so that they can go there and have a nice time? But then they picked their own, but then they were lazy one year and they were like, we'll just stay in the UK.
It's like
If only they'd done that
Pandemic
this one.
time,
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have made sense, wouldn't it? It's like we can social distance in our own country and make the game we want to make.
Yeah.
No, I think the UK one came around because they were just like, we should probably do this, given that we're here.
Someone tell that to Rockstar.
Oh,
As we always say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Edinburgh, wouldn't it? If they were doing it.
I was watching some footage of San Andreas because of those remasters. And of
Oh,
course,
boy. Yeah,
there's just the fourth bridge from Edinburgh is just right there in the middle of California, right? For some reason in San Andreas, like it's perfectly recreated. It's not even like a riff on the fourth bridge. It's just the fourth bridge. It's just right there for some reason in San Andreas. Really weird.
I mean, why not?
Well, I guess, yeah.
Only the people from the UK would have ever noticed.
Yeah. It's not a bridge you really use, that one, in San Andreas, I don't think. I don't know if it's a road bridge or rail bridge like in real life. I think it's probably a rail bridge. But it goes it's like the equivalent of the Bay Bridge, I guess. Not the Golden Gate, because that's recreated as the Golden, pretty much the same.
Yeah, I know what you
Bridge.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
For the fake San Francisco Bay.
But they took all the
I think
orange
the Golden
out.
Gate Bridge would be like super copyrighted at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Because it is like their one major landmark that everyone in the entire goddamn world knows.
They could probably charge more for destruction, right? As well,
Yeah.
like you need to blow up the.
I don't think you can hurt it, can you, in that game?
Well, no.
No.
Destruction physics in that one.
No, so they'd have had a slightly cheaper license than, I don't know, the Avengers or
every film ever.
It uses that constantly.
what was that platinum shooter that I've forgotten the name of? To begin with a V. You were like in a rocket suit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That blew up right at the start of the game. That boiled the sea.
Yeah, well, it's because they
under it,
always
like-
destroyed San Francisco like that.
Yeah.
I think last time we talked about that game, whatever the hell it's called.
What is it called?
It's definitely a V.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Vengeance. Something like...
That game was weird and cool.
It's awesome. Love
Yeah.
that game.
But like that, boiling the sea under the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm sure we've talked about this before in the podcast, because I remember making this exact same comment. That's the exact same at the start of that terrible movie, The Core, where the magnetic field fucks up and it boils the sea under the Golden Gate Bridge and melts it. It's like it's the exact same thing.
But that location is always...
And that's
shit happening in
Star Wars as well, doesn't it? I mean,
in Star Trek, it happens a lot because, like, the whale's always there in the voyage home, right? Although that was San Diego, wasn't it? But like the Star Trek, what's it? The Federation headquarters is right there.
Yeah,
yeah. So they always have like something happen just in the bay, right next to it for some reason.
And they still, for some reason, have that same bridge essentially.
Yeah, they didn't change it.
Vanquish.
Oh, yeah.
Vanquish. Yeah, that was. I mean, gameplay wise, it was good.
That's a hell of a game. Yeah, I love
but
it.
other style-wise, it was awesome. Weren't you fighting the space Soviets in that?
Yes.
Were you? Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that kind of stuff.
Because they decided not to go with space Nazis for a change.
Space
So
Soviets. What other game has that? Warzone. No, sorry, Battlezone 2. Doesn't that have space communists? Space Soviet?
yeah, maybe.
I seem to remember one of the factions.
Yeah, I can't remember Battlezone 2 that much.
And I suppose like Red Alert. Like
Well,
later
Well,
ones,
they're not
but-
technically space Soviets.
I'm going to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by
Straight up
capitalism.
regular Soviets.
Space.
They only get to be space in like the third game.
That's such a
Before that, it's time travel Soviets.
right. Yeah, it's time travel Soviets. I thought no. Who has the time travel?
Well, the Allies have it to
Yeah,
start
the
with, but
Allies
then
have it.
in the expansion of Red Alert 2, the Soviets get it and fuck up everything, basically,
Oh,
as
okay.
they tend to.
In the expansion to the first game,
To Red Alert 2.
to Red Alert 2. Yeah. Yuri's Revenge.
Yeah.
Isn't that
They
the one
travel
where-
back in time in, I think, San Francisco again, and then kill a bunch of dinosaurs, and then it fucks up history as you do.
Because isn't there a combo in that game where you can like put bombs, attach bombs to a cow, and then mind control the cow?
Yeah,
And,
Yuri.
like- and then move the cow into the enemy base.
Amazing.
It's
Not actually as helpful as it
not that useful, yeah.
Well, because I'm sure someone would be like, what's this suspicious cow doing?
Well, also cows are super slow.
Yeah.
So it takes ages. Not like the bomb trucks in CNC Generals. That used to that was always John's
God,
tactic.
the Jihad Jeeps.
Yeah, we would just
Not
build-
Jeeps, though.
They were like full on dump
Yeah, they were
trucks for the
just
big
dump
places.
trucks with a big pile of... Like, it had a texture in the dump that looked like it probably was just like a pile of random shells and shit that they just chucked in there and then blew up.
You just drove into the enemy base. That was pretty, I don't know, edgy. It was very War on Terror, those sort of CNC Generals era stuff. What were they called? The GLA.
Yeah.
And they just had like pretty racist, the barks or whatever.
I mean, yeah, they were stereotyped and hideously accented, and
Hmm.
they build for China.
Well, that was the Chinese.
I love
way.
that. China will grow larger. I mean, that's pretty much what they're doing.
Mhm.
Literally building islands in the middle of the sea.
See, that would have been a game mechanic for the...
Yeah. Well, building. So then you
Well,
put
you
air
have one-
bases on them.
It's because it's like that game especially was like meant to be more non-symmetric than previous
It
Command
was.
and Conquer
It's
games,
meant to
especially.
be. It's meant to be.
But then if you had just like one of the teams, essentially was the only one with access to terraforming, so they could actually change the map.
Terraform. I mean, that mechanic hasn't. It's like Populous had
Yeah.
terraforming, but that mechanic hasn't been that prominent in RTSs
No.
these days.
I mean, they've tried it a few times. 'Cause
Yeah.
they did. It was sort of using that weird like grey goo one, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Where you combined basically just a big lump of nanites that just flattened the terrain and also created units.
I'm surprised there isn't a spin-off Minecraft RTS of some kind.
And they've only just tried to do a Diablo, so give them a while.
Right,
Give them a
okay.
while more.
They perhaps could have gone that way with the Supreme Commander games, right? Given their whole tech thing was about nanobots and nanites and things.
Yeah.
They probably could have done something there if they wanted to.
Could you make Populous in Minecraft by like zooming out and then deforming the?
Maybe. I don't know how much.
Do Minecraft mods allow for that level of control?
Yeah, well, kind of. The trouble is, I'm not sure it'd be very. I'm not sure it's very easy in Minecraft to like decouple the like player, like the point of view. Essentially,
Yeah.
it always is your fate. It's always a character, even if you're flying around or whatever. And then that kind of limits your interaction.
You can only influence stuff directly in front of you.
Unless you're using a lot of scripting, I guess. But then
No.
I don't know how extensive that actually is in Minecraft's command block system thing. Because whenever you see like maybe someone's made battleships in Minecraft or whatever, and then it's just like a giant redstone computer behind the actual game board, but when you're interacting with it, it's still just like push the Minecraft buttons that are on the console in front of you to actually control the thing.
Right. It's no fun. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, it's fun to think about, but not actually fun to play.
Well, no, mainly because every computer in Minecraft runs incredibly slowly. If you ever see a video of something looking cool in Minecraft, it's probably super sped up.
Yeah.
Like the most recent one of those that I'd seen on YouTube was like a thumbnail. It's like, this Minecraft computer is a 1 hertz computer. It's like, holy shit, they've made it to 1.
Wow. That's still quite impressive, actually.
Yeah, fairly.
Yeah, not bad.
That they made it that fast in Minecraft Engine. Because, yeah, I saw stuff about the Atari 2600 emulators. Quite impressive. Like they've made one of those in Redstone. It's insane.
But how fast does that run?
Incredibly slowly. Like ridiculously slowly, but it does actually work. Madness.
Well, we're in one room. I'm here for Cribbo Limbo, or whatever you call it, the in-betweeny period.
I saw the phrase "Cribbo Limbo" was actually used by the BBC in a news headline. I was
Really?
like, what? That can't be real. That's a Rob word.
You're slipping. No, Cribbo Limbo is not just my thing.
No, I know it's not, but it's a Rob word.
They're slipping. The beef shouldn't be so callous.
We're in the studio here with newly equipped with microphone booms rather than like taping the microphones to like random
well, when we need a third
musical
mic,
stands and stuff like that.
Stick it to a random
It's all
stand.
getting very pro in here. I can see Rob's got an amiibo of Bowser that's just plucked a Rebel Snowspeeder out of the air.
Yes, indeed he has.
A participant in the Battle of Hoth.
Bowser wins all.
Yes.
Unless you try and use it in Smash Brothers, in which case it's probably still level 1.
No, it's a good question, actually. I probably have used that one in Smash.
Well, because you made it the blue browser.
Yeah, but that would have been Smash for Wii U.
Oh, you might not have updated it. Well, yeah, but it retains the information.
Oh, does it?
Because they made a big deal about that when
they made it backwards
talked about
compatible.
Smash Ultimate originally. They were like, your FP data will be retained.
Oh, okay. In which case,
So you probably haven't used it in Ultimate, but it might still have
it might
levels.
still work. Where is the NFC sensor on the Switch?
It's just on one of the Joy-Cons,
Yeah,
isn't it?
Oh, is
I
it?
think it's next to the home button.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amiibo.
Still going. Still probably going strong.
They
right?
still make Amiibo, yeah. But
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if there's many. The sort of support for them in games has got
Much less important.
much less, yeah.
Naturally. As was inevitable. Like Mii's.
Like Mii's. Yeah.
I think they're a success though. Then
I mean, as just cool little
As
statues, they
collectibles,
are
yeah.
well made. Yeah. I mean, I've got there's some more. I don't think they're in here, but I've got some more somewhere. Oh yeah, they're here behind this thing. There's the there's the Mario 30th anniversary edition in pixel form, which is pretty cool. The Sonic one. There's a Zero Suit Samus at the back there, and a Splatoon 2 one.
pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you might be looking forward to using your Splatoon ones again in Splatoon 3, because presumably they might still...
They might unlock something.
Yeah, they might unlock some random thing, as they have.
Just an
previously.
armor set. It wasn't it before. I think was that the way you got different weaponry in the campaign in Splatoon 1? Is that how they?
Because
gated that?
they originally that was like a weird unlock instead of in Splatoon 2, where that's just how the game worked then.
Yeah, you had to have. Yeah, there were 3 different weapon sets you could play the campaign with, but you had to have the either Squid Boy, Squid Girl, or Squid.
Yeah.
Superstar DJ.
Here we go.
Yeah, so we're here. And so this is our traditional Game of the Year time. But we think this time we're going to change up the format a bit and just do a bit of a chat about
Going to
it.
change up the format
Yeah.
by just not doing it.
By maybe not doing it. Because let's face it, it's not the best year.
It's not been a great year. None
But-
of us have played really the same stuff or have been
No.
particularly passionate about the same stuff. So
No.
fighting things is going to be tricky.
Wow.
So it doesn't really make sense for us to have a Saladcast award.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've done it 10 years.
More so, this would have. This,
Yeah.
We've done it 11.
Yeah,
So
I guess.
we're skipping a year after our streak has ended.
Our streak is.
I mean, we're still
finito.
doing it.
I mean, ish.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to run through some of the games we played that we enjoyed. Mostly Rob and Zach with their slightly
Mostly
different
Rob.
perspectives on things. And rather than it being a whole, this was a bad year, bummer, we'll just talk about the good stuff.
Yeah, but there's some bad stuff that might be worth mentioning as
Yeah.
well here.
Sure.
Because I'm just looking at the top of this list, and I think we'd be remiss to mention what a train wreck Ballad Wonderworld was. What a hilarious nightmare that
Yeah,
thing
but everyone
is.
knew that was going to be bad. That's like when we go back to our old school categories. That's definitely not most surprise.
I know.
No.
And it's sort of a... It's frustrating, isn't it? Because, it's Yuji Naka. He's like one of the godfathers of Sonic.
Has he ever made a good game that isn't a Sonic game?
Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg.
That's like a medium good game.
Medium.
It's a medium game. But no, he's not exactly been on top form for a long time. I think it's safe to say.
Has he been on top form ever? That's the actual question.
Sonic 1 and 2.
do those count though? I think when you at this point when you're talking about like the original of games that like literally original video games, I think it's almost like
original video games.
You get a pass on those, where it's just like they can be practically anything and it's going to be good because they're like the first.
I mean, you can make the first and it's bad.
Well, sure, but you have a much larger leeway to be able to be like, this is something new and original, and therefore everyone believes it to be good. Because
I don't know. I think Sonic came around at the point when there were definitely good games and bad games. Enough time had passed since freaking
Sonic
Space
came
War.
around when
I guess
Sonic came around when Sega really needed a booster.
Yeah,
to
and it worked
to help the Genesis, and yeah, it was exactly what they needed.
But also, then it's like, how much do you really put that on one guy? Because Sonic was definitely like a whole. They had a plan.
No, here's the thing. Yuji Naka's the famous one, but he's not actually the inventor of Sonic. That goes to someone else whose name I always forget, and and that really bothers me that I forget. But it's but yeah, no, he's not the inventor of Sonic. He's the key game designer of Sonic, but
seems to have lost his touch in the past 30 years.
Well, it's because he didn't do anything else. He made a lot of Sonic games, and then whenever he's trying to make a different game, it's not worked.
Nights into Dreams.
Yeah.
That's good.
Nights is only good for being a part of Sonic Pinball.
Oh yeah,
the Nights table was pretty decent as one of the two options you had in that game.
Yeah, was that the GBA Game Boy Color game, wasn't it? Was it GBA? I can't remember.
I think it was probably GBA.
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah,
Sonic Pinball.
It was a decent,
not Sonic Spinball.
A decent, shitty, old school portable pinball game of that era.
Oh, but was it as good as Pokemon Pinball?
Oh no, probably not.
Pokemon Pinball was pretty ace.
Yeah, because you could catch them all.
That's
obviously all you need.
You could catch them all, and obviously the ball was the Pokeball.
Yeah, and you just mash it against the Pokemon until they get captured.
Did you
that's how
catch
Pokemon
them
works.
all?
Yeah, I think so. They had. Well, I mean, it was original.
The original.
So it was only like 150.
Yeah.
Still, that's not bad.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty addictive.
Yeah.
Okay, so Saladcast Game of the Year, Pokemon
Pinball. Man, we'll have to revisit
whatever year that was.
God, yeah, we'll have to revisit that at some point. You can put that in the pinball series on the videos. Yeah. What else do we want to talk about? Backbone was weird. It's not going to win anything. Its music was tight, though. I'll give it credit for that. It had a good look and it had good music, but boy, did the narrative let it down. And it disappoints itself, which is weird. It's like it's one of the. I don't know how often have you come across a game where it's like the first portion of it is really something great and then it just falls apart afterwards. Like I'm trying to think how many times that happens, and it's like not many really, where it's where the opening is the best bit.
I mean, there's Avon Colony where the game just isn't finished.
Well, yeah. But I was thinking of things like maybe like Shadow of the Empire.
Shadows of the Empire. I was thinking that.
Where the opening is fantastic.
Demo was amazing.
Yeah, and you don't need anything else.
Talking of snow speeders getting plucked out the air by.
Yeah, and you don't really need anything else.
That was great. Although it was topped by the level of from Rebel Assault 2. No, sorry, not Rebel Assault. What do I think of?
Rogue
Squadron 2.
Yeah,
not Rebel Assault 2.
Was that actually? That might be called Rebel. It might. Was it Rogue? Oh no, it was something.
It's Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader.
Rogue Leader. That's it. Yeah,
something on the GameCube.
Yes. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a disappointment. Chivalry 2 did not disappoint, though. That was exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's a madness, and it's great fun. And I was going to potentially give it best audio thing if we were doing that for just the ludicrous screams.
For that.
Like it might have been just. It's not really an audio thing, I guess. It's just like best audio design
is that not
in general.
An audio thing? I think that's the exact definition of an audio
The
thing.
whole game is that. It's like it's the audio design of that game is fantastic.
You mean fantastic as in real dumb and stupid?
Yep.
In a dumb way.
That is exactly what I mean.
There's a little bit
it's
of
pure
depth,
entertainment,
isn't there? Tiny puddle of depth to the combat.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, it very rarely plays out that way, but they have thought about the combat system and tried to make it so you can be good at it.
They tried,
and I'm pretty sure I've come against people who are genuinely
good at it
and are fighting properly and are winning all the time. And it's like, and then they come up against me, and I'm like, swing my claymore.
Just swing. Yeah.
Yeah, Chivalry 2's a laugh. Yeah. That's not. We played XO1. Nothing really to say there. Now we're on to Zach's one game that came out this
The
year.
one game of the
And,
year.
like, kind of surprisingly came out because it's been in early access, obviously, for ages, and then suddenly became a 1.0 of Factory Town. But, there's not much to say about that. It's one of those games that I play, but...
It's sort of B tier in your...
I don't know if it's B tier. It's like triple B.
Triple B.
Triple B.
Except the A tier ones aren't AAA either in my games, because I don't play AAA games.
Play
Really.
games, no, too expensive. Not enough
But
triple
yes,
A-ness.
I think Factory Town ranks fairly high in the factory games that I've played rankings, but not like, it's never going to compare to the top of the list like Factorio or whatever.
But is it complicated enough?
It kind of is, but it still suffers from it's trying to do things that are complicated, but it's suffering under its own UI essentially.
Right.
Like not exactly the UI, like the way you interface with the game just makes everything very slightly awkward,
Right.
which in the long term just kind of gets annoying.
Right.
Like when when you have like a building selected or whatever, and then you want to deselect it, you right click. But if you happen to be building a path, right click deletes paths. So if your cursor happens to be over a path when you right click to unselect building a path, you just delete the path instead.
Right,
And then you have to rebuild it, and then you have to move your cursor off the path and then right click.
Yeah, that's bad.
Those are the kind of little tiny things that build up over time where it's
Right,
like, this
yeah.
could be slightly cleaner.
They needed a delete tool to switch to, or another key.
Yeah,
to
but then
hold
that's
or-
even more inconvenient because you're like, now I have to go to a whole different tool to actually be able to delete things. And they do have that. Like, they have a delete column tool where it just deletes everything in the space and the space above it.
Or maybe they needed an unselect function, I don't know. That's not that easy a problem to solve. Just like it's an inconsistency. Don't get me wrong, but which is the problem. But to keep it as a one-click action.
Yeah, I would have said you just make it so that. I don't know. I mean, I guess the inconsistency is that you can delete paths with right click. Like, you can't delete buildings with right click.
Yeah. Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed, but then again, you need the tool, and then that's an extra click, and then it's. But then that's how it's always been done, right? Like Sims, I'm thinking of SimCity. It's like you have to get that bulldozer out.
Yeah, I guess.
That was quite fun having a bulldozer to represent it.
Yeah.
Surely the answer is just a modifier, right? You just hold control and it's
Yeah,
mode.
Something like that. Exactly, or the D key.
But yeah, there's a lot of things like that. A lot of things when you're trying to do more complicated stuff in that game where it just gets slightly inconvenient. Also because of the way it's like it is 3D, so you can like stack things on top of each other. But then obviously, if you want to edit something on the bottom layer, you're like it can't really. There's not really a way to precisely get the cursor to target things that are like under other things very easily.
You kind of need like a slicer in the view, I
kind
suppose.
of. So it definitely it wants to be more complicated than it can handle almost. But apart from that, the actual like production chains and whatnot are pretty decently complicated in terms of like the things you have to move around and combine.
Does it work as a slightly more introduction to the genre compared to like a Factorio or not?
Yeah, probably. I mean, as with a lot of these indie, factory building games, it also suffers from like not tutorializing well enough. It has a tutorial, and the campaign kind of acts as a tutorial where it gates off, sections of the progress or whatever to ease you into it, but it doesn't have enough, and there's a lot of features that never get talked about. I mean, kind of intentionally. Like, there's a whole almost programming, except it's like block based, where you just link the outputs of different functions together, and then you can program things. But you don't need that, and therefore the game never goes into it. It's just there. But then that's sort of confusing for people because it's just like, what the hell is all this shit?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's not like you turn on an advanced mode and
no.
Yeah, and it all appears.
You just unlock it at some point, and then people get confused. And then there's a lot of just like things that just aren't. It's a thing that I've been finding with a lot of games that I've been playing recently. Actually, is just like there's a lot of cases where things just aren't sufficiently explained, even to the point of like just a tooltip. Where it's just like when you unlock the like advanced logistics, and you get like all the different things that can manipulate things on belts. So you've got like the splitter, and like that's fairly clear what that does. You put it there and it splits the things going past. And then you have the merger, which is the opposite of the splitter. But then you've got like the pusher and the grabber and the one way, and it's just like those are all very similar, and it doesn't ever really explain what the exact difference is between those different things and how they actually work. And it's like those kind of very small bits of tutorial that don't exist kind of make it more difficult for people to get into as well.
These all sound like not necessarily core mechanical problems. These all sound like polish issues.
Yeah, I mean that's what. Yeah, it's a lot. That's how indie games are really.
Yeah,
because at a certain point with these complicated games, you reach the wiki point where when it reaches a critical mass of things being not fully explained in the game, a wiki just appears, and then you just go there and look instead.
But then there's definitely AAA games I've played this year where it's like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me there, or like, oh, you haven't told me what this is. I need to look this up. Like, it's not just limited to indies, although it is inherently an indie problem, I guess, because they
don't have the time to go through that shit. Working
to budget and time way more strictly than anyone else. Than AAA anyway. But
and AAA budgets aren't. They don't spend their time on that for a different reason.
Yeah, I guess because they can do it later.
Yeah, and also obviously early access kind of inherently causes those things to happen. There's going to be things that are added in early access that aren't fully explained at the time, and then sort of get forgotten about and never fully explained.
Yeah, never really integrated properly into the tutorial or into the manual.
Because I've been finding that a lot quite recently when I've been playing the DLC for Oxygen Not Included, where it's just like. They did update the like in-game wiki database thing. It's not really a wiki, but it's just like it's got a description of theoretically all the different things in the game, except firstly, not all the different things in the game, and secondly, sometimes not the actual information you actually need. Like when I was looking at the nuclear reactors, one of the new buildings, I was like, okay, it has a liquid input port, presumably for coolant. And no other ports. So how the fuck does this thing work? Like, where does the fuel go in? How do I control where does the heat come out, presumably? Because it doesn't explain that at all in the information page of the thing. So at a certain point, I was just like, well, I could just build it and try and work out how it works. Or I could, I guess, go and create an entire sandbox map and then build it there safely so I don't fuck up my actual base.
Right.
So it would have been like slightly more information would have been useful. Because it's weird because, I mean, in that case, I feel like they have just sort of forgotten. Because some buildings do tell you things that aren't necessarily... Because in Oxygen Not Included, you can have like pipe imports and outputs where it will usually tell you what those take in the information card about the building. Where it's like, this takes 2 kilograms of oil a second or whatever. But there are certain cases with some buildings where it will output to the environment, and most of those also are described in the info card as well. And then it will usually, from that, you can determine whether it's going to be a pipe or just an environmental output. But the reactor doesn't do that, and I think the reason it doesn't do that is because of the way the reactor works. It's slightly more complicated in that it's not like a stable number. Like, it doesn't take it's not like it uses 5 kilograms a second of coolant. It uses a certain amount of coolant per second dependent on like how much fuel there is in it and how much the temperature goes up and all this kind of stuff. So they kind of didn't put the numbers in there because they're not exact numbers.
Right.
But then it's still, you do still kind of need to know what it's going to do to be able to actually even figure out how to use it without just building it and hoping it doesn't explode.
Well, that adds a little bit of drama to these games, I guess.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, like...
there's an unknown element of explosion.
Well, yeah.
Just blow up.
But the thing is, like, to that end, it almost seems like they did this intentionally because the reactor actually does have, like, a whole meltdown sequence where it does explode.
Huh.
Like, it actually does something different if you fail to control it properly. But then you can't force people to cause a meltdown by not giving them the information about how the thing actually works. That's not fair.
It's funny, though.
It is funny.
So, Factory Town.
By default, Factory Game of the Year.
Well, I guess.
And Zach's Game of the Year.
Unless Oxygen Not Included as DLC counts.
Oh, I guess it might, actually. because it is an update.
Yeah, and it did actually come out this year.
There you go.
Factory game of the year.
Surprising no one. Yeah, factory game.
Surprising no one.
It's called Factory Town. Enjoy.
There aren't any factories, as far as I can tell, in Forza Horizon 5.
I bet there are. There's got to be some scenery.
Mexico make all kinds of cars. And
I know, but there aren't really any like big warehousey type buildings you come across in that version of Mexico. There's like little towns, and that's about it. It's like it's not really a sort of like the most built up area is like still looks sort of like fancy little shacks. Not shacks. That's harsh.
fancy little shacks.
Not fancy little shacks, but you know, like little buildings and little streets,
fancy.
and it's like they don't look particularly industrial. The most industrial stuff you see are like farms, I guess.
Right.
Like every Forza game, you got to have your farms to drive through and ruin.
All the fences.
Yeah. And brick walls now since Forza 4 that you could just ram through for some reason.
Oh yeah, those are stone brick walls.
Stone walls, yeah. It's another one of those.
It's another one of those.
Except they seem to be increasingly doubling down on the let's be talkative during things to make things seem more exciting, and it
Shut the hell up.
It does not work.
Oh my god.
And thankfully, I've found more and more outlets that agree with me on this, and it's like I don't know why they keep believing that that it's a good thing, and it's
being
like
so happy clappy. I thought it was like, do you remember when everything was like cool and like Wipeout was all like, hey, let's do ecstasy and like, go to the club, and then it's like, you know, this kind of try hard stuff is so annoying.
It's very this generational though, isn't it? Like because.
Drives me mad. Imagine if Tony Hawk's had that. Like, it's like what?
Well, I mean, it kind of did eventually.
I mean, it was kind of all good job, dude, wasn't it? It didn't really, but it didn't say any of that. Like it just kept it all because it was by the number. It was just like it was that era.
That could
they couldn't do much of that stuff, I guess. Then,
well, I mean, it did start going that way eventually with like 8 or whatever that's called.
I'm sure it did.
American Wasteland, all those.
Right.
Like the open world Tony Hawk games. Once it started getting that age. Just before Skate.
Did they start asking you to put it on YouTube?
I don't know if they... Maybe, as like a mission, where it's like, oh, we're going to film this Skate
sick
video.
Grind, dude. You put that on YouTube. Like, fuck off. Don't tell me what to do.
I mean, at least in the context of a skating game, it kind of made more sense.
Sort of.
Whereas, like, because that's what you do with skateboarding. It's like you video it and with a fisheye lens and then upload it to the internet.
Yeah, but don't act all... like obvious about it.
You kind of just want like crowd members around you when you do tricks. Like someone, like if it was an open world skater game, like those end up sort of becoming like you just want dudes on the street just going, "Oh, sick, man! That was so sick."
That would be good.
Yeah, that's what you want. You just want like casual reactions to things. You don't want someone saying, "By the way, we could sponsor you for that trick," like or something like that.
Although that could be funny if it was played like they were like super corporate suits, like would appear with like with shades and stuff, and they were like
we're gonna Men in Black.
we're gonna pay you all this money.
This does all sound like things that have already happened in one of these skate games.
Probably. But at least that has an ironic twist to it, whereas you don't want them on the nose with these fucking.
Yeah, Forza's big problem is that they're directly following it on from 4.
Yeah.
In that you are the supposed superstar of Horizon 4. And they keep using that phrase over and over again. You're a superstar. Aren't you great? Aren't you the best? You're the best. And all the radio stations get in on it as well because they're reporting on how you're progressing and like what's going on. So they're all saying like, and our superstar's going to be there. And it's like, oh my God, shut up. It's like, I don't need any of this.
Absolutely hate it.
It's like,
this started in Dirt 2. This wasn't like
Forza.
No.
This Forza, I mean, I don't think any of this was in Forza 2, really.
No.
I think that was quite low key on this stuff. And if they've just like leaned more and more into it, and it's getting worse and worse as a result.
Yeah. Come on, guys! You have an amazing looking game with like a solid handling physics model, some great cars.
I mean, they err away from it being full simulation.
Yeah, of course.
Like Forza Motorsport is. They make it way more arcadey to handle.
They make it fun.
They do make it fun. But yeah, you lose stuff as a result of that approach, and it's a game for just driving around and dicking around and doing things. They need to come up with more ways to do that.
Yeah,
they don't need to tell me it's good; they need to be good.
Yeah,
it's that simple. Telling me it's good is more likely to make me think it's not. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's like if someone's just like if the product I'm trying to consume is constantly telling me it's the best thing in the world.
Be cool.
Be cool,
Be
man.
cool, guys. Be cool. Stop being so Microsoft.
But the trouble is they're screwed because like the logical endpoint of trying to be cool in cars is like Ken Block shit, and that's what happened to Dirt.
Yeah.
That's the exact same problem.
I mean, they've got some of that here as well.
Well, yeah, naturally.
Like they haven't strictly got Gymkhana or anything like that, but there's some Hoonigan cars in it.
Cool is to fucking strip it all back and be just like Dirt Rally and be like a guy with a way too powerful car and a guy with an accent, like a Welsh accent, giving you instructions on how not to like completely bail off a cliff. That is cool.
I mean, here's hoping Dirt Rally 3 pulls it back, like if that becomes a thing.
Well, there was no problem with Dirt Rally 2.
No,
I mean, there were problems with Dirt Rally 2, but not major ones.
Hey.
Anyway, take a chill pill, guys. If you want to see what cool looks like in video games, just play some Jet Set Radio.
I might be coming to the horrible realization that next Gran Turismo game might be for me.
We don't know.
I mean, you don't like the physics model of Gran Turismo. That's the actual problem.
I've never liked
change.
GT's collision model. I've never, its driving has always been fine, but it's the collision model has always sucked. Like how other cars hit each other, and I think they've always designed that to make it fair, on the player and fair on the other drivers. They know players are going to be ramming into things, so they dumbed it all down. And the problem was it felt horrid, and it just wasn't for me. Which it's fine, that's fine, but it's like I never. It's been a long time since I got into a GT game.
It wouldn't happen, but what would a Gran Turismo version of like a Horizon game look like? You know, if they had their second series that became almost as big as the first, that was about.
Yeah, they'd have to.
I don't think they could do that.
No, I mean, but they kind of could, right? Because like if Gran Turismo stripped away its menus to go to places and actually made it so you drove around to do those things.
Yeah.
So it's set in like a city, and it's a fake city, and maybe it's got all the like these famous racetracks just dotted around it, like in some horrible amalgam.
Just do fucking Japan, where it's like mountain roads. Just do Initial D.
What, like Toge? Yeah.
I'm just imagining it be like. It would just be like Gran Turismo racing, but they're like in the world of Ridge Racer, where it's just like this weird, like super enhanced world.
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
Oh, we should probably talk about games that actually came out this year. Like imaginary awesome games.
Yeah. So Forza Horizon 5, it's good. It doesn't do anything new. So if you want more driving, it's all right. If you want something to show off your
If you bought a next generation
X,
console and you're trying to think of something that actually looks like it's next generation,
you might as well play this.
Yeah, there's that.
It looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, but just play on mute. Right.
Genesis Noir was this year. Can you believe that? Like super early this year. That was that Jazz game. Talking about things that look good and play weird. This was another game that I don't think quite lived up to the expectations I had of it, I guess, just because the narrative ended up being so all over the place and not really a straight narrative. I was kind of going into it thinking it would be like it described itself as like a cosmic adventure, so there was going to be like a noir story with jazz somehow intermingling with
aliens,
space and stuff like that. And what it ended up being is like the creation of the universe and of space travel kind of story, weirdly intertwined with a bit of time travel, and as a result, I'm not sure the narrative really worked, which is a shame because its style is like incredible. Like they really nailed that kind of cartoony. Like the whole game is in black, white, and gold. If you know, there's like until right at the end where it gets really colourful. Like throughout the game, it's like you're in this like very muted palette, and it looks awesome throughout that. Yeah, it's just they perhaps went a little too wild with what they were doing, and maybe that's just the spirit of jazz, man. I was supposed to just go with it more, but I wanted more noir in my noir.
La Noir.
Not LA Noir. No. With an E.
Bit of noir. Why did they put an E on there?
Okay. Next on the list is Halo Infinite. What do you want to do? Do you want me to get into this now?
No. Let's not.
No.
Let's do that as a standard section, because otherwise I think it's going to get unfocused.
Yeah, maybe you might be right.
Already.
Halo Infinite's a bit of a discussion. I mean, I'm just thinking now. It's like, does it sit as high up as I thought it would in the Game of the Year list? It's like I'm not so sure, having now finished the campaign. Like, but yeah.
Well, we're going through these in alphabetical order, apparently. So.
Yep, that's just how they're written
It's
down.
just how it is.
Okay, so like recent addition to the list, Gnome and I have played the first few hours of It Takes Two,
Baby.
which is the winner of this year's Game Awards, the TGAs of 2021. It Takes Two,
Baby.
Before it got sued for having that name, except not quite. It was
Take Two
Yeah.
got angry at them for calling it It Takes Two.
Baby. Me and you. Just takes two. Sorry. Good.
Yeah, it's well made. It's sort of.
I mean, if this was Game of the Year at the Gaming Awards, like we should consider it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's.
Not that we're picking a Game of the Year.
No. And as I say, Gnome and I haven't got through it all, and this is not me belittling Gnome's game playing skills because she doesn't play very many of them. But it's another one of those games where it ended up being a bit trickier than I expected it to be from a player perspective. Like, there's no real. It doesn't really have difficulty options, and it goes in being like a full-on platformer, basically. So you can't dumb it down particularly. So we've struggled through. Gnome got incredibly angry at herself and with me and the game.
Oh dear.
Because it's just not a skill she has. You know what I mean? She's not grown up with 3D platformers like we have, and so found it pretty tough.
Yep.
And that might be the game's biggest flaw, in that it's going in. It's going into it with all the normal expectations that you know what you're doing in terms of 3D platformer movement, which I think is perhaps where it doesn't feel like that's where this game should be positioned, right? It's a co-op game. Like, it's clearly targeted at couples because that's its whole story.
I mean, to some extent, the original Psychonauts had that problem a little bit of expecting you to kind of be able to play Mario 64, even though it's not really that kind of game.
I mean, I kind of feel okay with that for in most cases, right? Like mainline platformers, I don't know, if I was going into a Banjo-Kazooie now or a ukulele now, I'd be all like, oh yeah, 3D platformers, right? Got this. I'm doing this. Ratchet and Clank, right? Yeah, I mean that's not quite the same, but you know what I mean. I'm going into it. And then this does the same thing, but it does tutorialize its motions and things. But little things like Gnome was getting a bit confused why she couldn't make many jumps, and it's like, have you tried holding A for a bigger jump? Little things like that the game doesn't telegraph.
Right. That was in
Mario.
Because she has a tendency to just tap, tap, tap to do actions, and rather than me, where I'm like a big old shove my thumb onto the
You destroy controllers.
I destroy controllers and give myself huge calluses on my thumb that haven't gone away for many years.
That is from Super Mario Brothers 1, right? The whole.
Oh yeah,
whole
it's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic platforming thing, but it's just not something she knows, right?
But I think this is a very specifically, incredibly narrow, exactly our generation problem. Generations
Maybe.
after us are now, if you are a couple, you probably are both that competent in 3D platforming. Whereas in our generation, it is possible to have two completely separate.
Yeah, is that a thing? Is it just assumed that all kids these days have played a platform?
I don't know if everyone has even been on consoles because they're all on their freaking phone. Or
I'm not saying everyone, because obviously gaming is still quite niche technically.
Quite niche, but more lucrative than
copies.
I mean, there's loads of people who played Infinite Runners on the Tube or whatever, but they wouldn't be able to do a 3D.
Sure, they're not
But they would know how to hold down the jumper.
They would. Yeah, that is true. That's fair. To be fair.
Yeah, they'd have had to learn that if they're playing that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to me, and it's okay. So it makes it hard for me to judge what this is doing. It's quite well produced. It runs at a nice solid frame rate on the Series X. It's not very sharp. The animation, I think, is probably a little too obviously mocapped. Do you remember the older argument people had, the problem with Sonic Adventure 2, and then everything looks like it's a guy in a costume. It's there's a little bit of that feel going on here.
But at least they're mostly person-shaped.
Yeah,
not solid characters.
It's vaguely acceptable, but they do that sort of like slightly over-exaggerated,
Right? Yeah.
like animations. Despite the game being somewhat grounded in like at the very start. Anyway, these are supposed to be real people that are turned into kids' toys, and then the moment they become kids' toys, it's like their personalities and like. I'm gesturing too much, yeah. But like, you know what I mean? They sort of start acting suddenly very different. But it is quite like they do make you do it. You can't play it alone. There are forced co-op challenges. It would be impossible to do it yourself. Although I'd really like to see someone try.
Well, I mean,
use that stick with your chin.
I bet there probably is some kind of speedrun
dual
controller method.
Play with your feet. Yeah, so it's a bit. It's yeah. It was tricky for us, but I think it's good. Like, I think some of the more innovative stuff comes later. But you know, we've defeated a big angry vacuum cleaner, so I can't say that very often. We played the Metroid Dread demo, but you know we missed the full thing, so I don't think we can really talk about that hugely here. But we like what we saw generally. I've put Flight Sim on here because it came out on console, and that was kind of a big deal. Like, it came out on PC last year, technically, but the console release was this year. And it's, that's a pretty thing. And you can argue that it's possibly the only Series S and Series X exclusive.
Right.
Because it can't run on Xbone.
No way. Oh, interesting.
So it might be the only one.
Weird. Yeah, that's the kind of quote-unquote game that I might play if I was retired. I will learn to be an airline pilot.
Yeah, you need a huge amount of time if you want to go. But it is quite nice just to float over places, and they lean into that a little bit to be like, you don't want to get into this? Oh, it's fine. Just fly over places and see how pretty they look. It's great. But then...
It is interesting because also, like, the mechanics of it is like you actually do end up learning how a plane works.
Oh yeah,
like what pilots do.
Yeah. There's a whole like flight school part of the game. Like, so if you really want to get into that, you can.
That kind of. I mean, I was always into planes, but that kind of stuff. I only realized recently. Did you notice that? Like, you know, when you on the runway to take off, you know how they go to. I can't remember. They go to like 50% power,
and then boost up,
and then go to 100% power. And it's pretty obvious, but it's because if there's a problem with one of the engines, if you go to 100% straight away, you'll just veer straight off the runway.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Yeah.
If it's asymmetrical thrust, you'll just go flying off the runway. So that's why they always go to 50% first and then 100%.
So they can feel it. Yeah.
It's just one of the checklist things, but it's one that you notice when you're actually in the plane. And presumably you have to do that in Flight Sim, right? You have to sit there and go,
I mean, I didn't.
Yeah.
you never flew any plane with two engines, though, right?
Yeah, but if they're either side of the plane,
yeah, I meant wrong.
The same problem.
Right? I mean, I have flown the little jet that's in there, and it's like I think it's got two little jets at the back.
Oh, that's probably less of a problem.
Sort of either side of the tail.
Probably don't have to do that for a private jet.
No, they're not like the big ones under the. I haven't flown like the massive airliners.
Yeah.
In that, and most of the time I was in prop planes anyway. Just messing around. I think like my biggest nitpick with Flight Sim is that there's a lot of free updates they've done to it, but most of them don't come in the box, if that makes sense. So you get Flight Sim, and it's like, oh, I want to. There's a huge menu somewhere where it's like, I want the Japan pack, and it will download updates for rendering Japan well, or I want the Euro pack. So you update, and it will suddenly make Germany real nice.
Come out.
And it's like all of that is piecemeal, all of that is optional, and all of that is opt-in. And it's like, and that like, so I'll be when I first flew around England and things like that, it's like this. I'm sure this doesn't look quite right.
They didn't get to the UK for ages.
No, and it's like they missed out some of the bigger towns and cities, and it's just like they haven't done the work here. That's mildly
even
surprising.
London was not good on launch.
No, it wasn't. But if you want to go do the real London, you can't just download the game and do it. You've got to download the game and then go get the specific update pack. And it's like, I guess there's a reason for it. These packs are massive.
But it'd be cool if it was
the game size is huge.
It'd be cool if it prompted you like, "Hey, you're flying around here a lot. Like, you should probably get the pack for this."
By the way, there's an update for this area, or you're about to fly in an area.
Yeah. Do you want to wait and download the giant update?
Yeah. Do you want me to grab this for you? Or if just the streaming tech was just a little bit better, because the game is using like streaming from the internet to get hold of its. A lot of data about the world.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of data already there. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of data it pulls in.
Yeah. quite online required, obviously.
Yeah, I think some of that's like texturing for the ground and stuff like that. It's all sort of pulling a lot of that in live, depending on where you're flying. And maybe like the stuff you're actually installing is like the local landmark packs and things like that, so it knows how to render the buildings nice.
Yes, because otherwise it's just making it up based on sort of an annotated map. Basically.
Yeah.
An annotated, not just map, but photogrammetry. Well, not photogrammetry. Whatever. Like
don't get me wrong. It's like it's all like
Plus.
AI guesswork, and there's a lot of
which is impressive.
It's impressive from a distance. Get up close and it's hugely wrong, especially in an area you know. But hey, like what could they have done? This is the whole world we're talking about
cool.
here.
Yeah,
it's pretty neat. But yeah, I wish they figured out a way to streamline some of that process. Would have been nice because I didn't know it existed at first, and I took a little dug around a bit, and it's like
to get the packs.
Yeah, and it's like
I've just been
seeing
seeing on
weird.
YouTube they just put out. It's a bit like Civilization. They put out videos for like the latest update, and it's like beautiful scenes of each, but they do it quite gradually.
Yeah,
which kind of makes sense. I mean, they had to launch something.
And the bit I probably should try is they added air racing.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
And that could be quite a laugh.
The Reno air race type stuff.
Yeah. So
and they added an F-18. I think I don't know how realistic that is, but
did they launch that? Because
just recently,
the
Top Gun pack. Yeah, I thought they were holding that back because the film got delayed. Yeah.
I don't think I think they've released it now. I don't know what's going on with that film, but it's not going to be good anyway. Sorry,
Probably not.
Sorry, guys. Watch the original. It's pretty good.
Goose. Moving on. Nerds Online, a Zachtronics game. I played a Zachtronics game.
Yeah, technically.
But it's a card game. It's the most infuriating thing I've probably played all year, but actually it's quite a laugh when you got a crew of you playing it.
Game of the year.
Game of the year. Nerds. Psychonauts 2! The long-awaited return to Psychonauts. It's been nearly 20 years.
Has it? Shit.
It was like 2003-ish,
Oh,
I think, the first one. Something like that.
And this is a direct sequel where you kind of need to know what happened in the first one.
And the VR special they made in the middle.
That's kind of...
And that story it follows on directly from that story as well. And there is a little recap thing in the game. It's a bit weird. That they chose to do this, and it's basically like it is like 2 days later after like Psychonauts 1, which is kind of strange in its own way.
After like 17 years,
yeah. But hey, it's a pretty good game. Like I'm not sure it's Psychonauts 1 level of impact and memorable.
It's hard to do with a sequel, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, there's no milkman, you know.
Yeah.
The game doesn't make me want to deliver the milk, but it's and it does have its moments. It has. I think the thing about Psychonauts 2, in retrospect, is I think most of it is carried by its style, not necessarily its minute-to-minute writing, not necessarily its overall narrative. But boy, does it carry a lot of style. Also, Jack Black's in it, and he's awesome.
He's typically in
Double Fine
games.
Double Fine stuff.
He's obviously friends with Tim Schafer.
Because I think he was on like the main trailer as one of the names, as it turns out, and like I didn't realize he was there. So I got to it, and it's just like, that sounds a lot like Jack Black. It totally is Jack Black. That's awesome. So I was surprised by it, but it's like I'm thinking his name was up front on the project. So that's
the voice of Bowser.
The voice of Bowser. Yes.
I mean, I think that Milkman level is so good that it has its... Last I checked, it has its own separate Wikipedia article just for the level that hasn't been deleted or merged into the main article.
Oh, that's kind of amazing.
Which is like, you have to be pretty good to manage that, because it's definitely going to get merged into the main article.
That's not to say there aren't some creative or inventive levels here, but none of them are going to stand out as much as that. I'm not even sure many of them stand out as much as the kaiju level from the first the first game, right? They're just and that was a very short little level, but they went out of their way to do something different. And I feel like they don't really break the mold of the platformer particularly,
right?
If that makes sense.
That's kind of a tool.
Yeah, it is a bit of an ask, but like the first game did that at times
a lot.
Yeah,
like the RTS level.
yeah.
But they kind of got that out of them with Brutal Legend, I guess. Full on RTS.
Apparently, there's a way of playing Brutal Legend and you can just not do those.
Not do the game.
Making the game about 2 hours long.
Yeah. If you, story mode,
Same
I
as Full
guess.
Throttle, though.
Yeah.
So, contender.
It is a contender.
It is winning some Game of the Year awards.
Yeah,
I
it was huge. As I say, it was an enjoyable time. And don't get me wrong, and I 100%ed it. I went back and found every little thing, which, actually, you don't really get anything nice for doing that, which is a little bit of a shame. But other than Chivos, but I did go and do the Chivos. And as I decided, dialing back in the amount of in the game. That was his victory dance from like 2 days ago, and he's not really doing it.
No.
It's like, what happened in those 2 days?
Missing audio thing.
Missing audio thing.
Okay.
Not enough victory dance. You do eventually unlock you can unlock a thing where if you just leave the controller alone, he'll just start doing that. Like if you just leave him idle for a while, he'll just start going. Outriders. Here's a game that's hard to remember.
I've forgotten everything about Outriders. Don't even remind me if it's not worth it. Don't even do it.
This was the sort of like co-op online shooter trying to be a bit Destiny-like that was made by People Can Fly.
Right.
The Bulletstorm guys.
Yeah, your face from Kill with Skill days.
Yeah. I didn't finish it. I fell off it. It was a bit of a slog. I don't think its story was particularly interesting in the end. Its dialogue was nuts in its sort of like over enthusiastic use of swearing, but not quite Bulletstorm nuts, if you know what I mean.
That can get a bit cringy. Personally, I found it cringy in Bulletstorm.
I know, but like that's the thing that like Bulletstorm lent into it. This kind of doesn't. This is just how they are, if you know what I mean. And like as a result, it doesn't work as a joke either.
Right, fair.
Yeah, forgettable. They have just done a big update to it, but yeah, I've uninstalled it now. Sorry. I kind of want to like People Can Fly stuff, but yeah, that's problematic. Just boring, actually. Just boring. We played the Rift Breaker demo, and I will get around to playing the full thing, possibly, at some point. Because that seemed kind of neat. Bad dialogue, but seemed kind of neat in concept. Sable. I mean, this is kind of a contender as well. Like, I have technical problems with it. Like, it is flawed. The presentation isn't hot, and it runs like garbage on a Series X at times, which is hugely surprising. But I kind of like where it's coming from. I like that it's distilling the open world game into just the Zen-like act of exploration and just going to places and finding what's there without necessarily telling you to do that.
But is what's there worth going there for?
I mean, it's not very deep. Like, it's not very complex. It's not. I would have liked there to be a few more like weird surprises. There are a couple. There's one bit in particular that's just like, oh, okay, that's what this giant hill was. It wasn't a hill. That's fun. The giant sandworm thing. You're inside of for a bit, and it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And it's got a good look to it. It's got a great sound to it. But it was just a bit glitchy, right? Like it ran badly. The audio would occasionally there was one bit of music that, like, if I'd went and had a conversation for one of the discoverable things that you can do in the world, and there's several of them. Whenever I had that interaction, a specific bit of music would start playing and never stop until you restarted the game. So it's like you could be like anywhere else in the world where there's supposed to be like other themes and stuff, and you just have that one theme forever. And it's like worst audio thing, music that doesn't stop. So Sable, I think I was hoping for a little more than I got, but I like its idea. Maybe Sable 2 will nail it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure they'll do a sequel to it. It's one of those it feels like a one and done.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Scarlet Nexus. Do you want to talk about saccharine dialogue that is
Oh yeah.
far too positive all the time?
Oh gosh.
This is that game. It's like they could have carved out about 75% of the talking in this game and it would have been a better game.
What happened to being cool? What happened?
It's not cool, man. It's not.
Relax, dudes.
I mean,
Yeah, but in this case, it's because it's anime.
Yeah,
It's
fair.
not
Okay,
bro.
that's fair.
It's
Yeah,
anime.
yeah. Okay.
I think it's I think it's a
Anime.
far too literal translation. I think is probably the problem.
Yeah.
Notice me, senpai.
Yeah, but like even if it is a little translation, if like, is it okay in Japan to just be constantly, nah, bruh, that's fine, that's okay. You've just insulted me to my face, but I appreciate that. And the whole game feels like therapy, like, or that you're sat in one of those sessions where it's like everyone's acknowledging each other, and it's like, no, I appreciate you telling me that. Thank
It's like
you.
woke anime.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, but that is
Anime's the least woke thing imaginable, isn't it?
that is kind of like Japanese culture, though, right? Because it's just politeness, except
Politeness. Yeah, it's
taken
fine.
into like the anime cheese factory
Yeah.
politeness.
Welcome to the...
Yeah. Like this. I mean, the script is in it. Like even without all of that stuff, the script is nuts. Is underutilized. Like its core concept is core concepts. There's a billion things going on, and it's wild and mad. But they never really do anything with that gameplay wise. All of that stuff that's going on is just is only ever done in dialogue, not ever in particularly inventive stuff. There's a whole there's a whole time travel thing, and things all happened in the past that are now affecting your future, and people turn into weird monsters because the moon told them to, or created a layer of thing that made monster people. It's really odd and it's really strange, but they don't really like nail the landing on that stuff. It's just sort of there. It's an incredibly weird game with a fairly well accomplished combat system. Like the combat system's good. It's complicated enough, and there's a lot going on, and especially towards the end of the game where you've unlocked like 8 support characters that you can. Well, you've got 9, but you can only use 8 at a time, and you're calling upon their powers to mix up your strategy, and you can load more than like 2 or 3 of those, turn them on at a time. So there's all kinds of madness going on around you, and your cohorts will step in to help you out like randomly as well, and you've got like button prompts on screen to deal with that whilst you're dealing with bigger and bigger enemies and more complex scenarios. And also everything starts with the word brain, so you're gaining brain points to level up, and brain drives as your special ability, and it's brain this and brain that. Everything is brain. There are people without brains.
They've been brain drained.
They've been brain drained. It's a madness. It's a very strange thing. But yeah, they could have cut 75% out of it and it would have been better. The fact that it makes you play it through, like it's a long campaign, and they do the 2 character thing. So you don't see the whole story unless you play it through twice. And it's like, I'm not going to play it through twice. I've done the once. I've done my time. It's like there's some really intriguing stuff in the other playthrough that does sound interesting, but I'm not going to do it because you were just too long, and I don't want to have to give everyone presents again and talk about plants for God knows how long. I like plants. They're my friends. You're my friend too. Notice me.
Notice me, Sam.
Oh my god. And the music's pretty good as well. Talking about music, Artful Escape. The whole game is music. The whole game is
The whole quote unquote game.
Yeah.
Music.
Yeah. There's not much like challenge or like you're just sort of traversing this world whilst wailing on a guitar by holding a button. But it's presented real good. And it is kind of a madness. It's like one of the more memorable like worlds, and some of the nicest visuals I think in a game I've seen this year. It's like, again, I don't think it fulfills its narrative promise particularly well, but all the voice acting is great. It's got some great jokes. Like one of my favorite moments of the year probably in this game, where you encounter the strange heavy metal monster that just talks in the entire time, and the whole screen turns red whenever whenever he talks, and it's just like okay, and then takes everyone aback whenever it happens. It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. And Mark Strong is in it, and he's cool because he's always cool because it's Mark Strong. It's a fun little experience. It's not going to take you long to play. It's one of those, like, if you've got Game Pass, why not treat yourself, have a couple hours, just wailing on a guitar.
Go Squealy, go Mealy.
Absolutely. I need to take the next one off the list actually because I didn't actually start playing it. I thought I would, but the Gunk came out.
But we've not played it.
But I didn't actually get around to playing it. But talking about disappointments, if we want to talk about the thing that sort of let me down the most this year, 12 Minutes. I kind of had high hopes for this one. With James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Dafoe being the cast. There's a couple of other voices here and there, but that's the bulk of it. I just really didn't. The time loop mechanic just got annoying. Like, and I know that's a real hard problem to solve in a game that revolves around a time loop and doing things differently every loop, but
they didn't.
They didn't solve it. It got, and like any sort of point and click adventure, it got to the point where it's like I didn't know what to do to progress the story on, or to see new things. Coupled with the time loop mechanic, made that incredibly frustrating because you have to go through this 10-minute. It's called 12 minutes, but like the main loop is about 10 minutes long most of the time. And you're going through this 10-minute sequence, and if you get it wrong, nothing happens. That's 10 minutes wasted.
Do it again.
And you got to either wait for the loop again to get to the point where you want to try something else, or
play the Song of Time and stuff.
Play the Song of Time, yeah. It just got frustrating. So I never finished it, and like I got to a major twist in the story, and I was just like, what the hell? How on earth does that work? And there's some really weird stuff in that game. Bleak and weird stuff. Which is kind of cool. But yeah, let down by its core gameplay.
Its mechanics.
Yeah.
There's a problem when you're trying to make a game. You have to make the game good.
Yeah.
Maybe look at some Nintendo games and see what they do. Right.
It was a difficult thing to get right. And shout out to, this one's just mostly a shout out, to Unbeatable White Label, which is kind of the prologue to a rhythm RPG. And this is just kind of the rhythm game part of it. But the music in here is real good. And it's mechanically very simple. And that you only really have 2 or 3 buttons you need to press for the whole rhythmy stuff. But it's quite nicely presented. And the tutorial music in particular has got a sort of bit of Jet Set Radio vibe to it, and I really like it. So it's yeah, and it's free on Steam. Just go play it. No excuse. Go play it. They're doing updates to it as well, to this prologue version, which is kind of fun, ahead of the real game's release. So yeah, little shout out to Unbeatable. I mean, you have my attention.
Boom.
And that's every 2021 game we played this year.
Boom, shakalaka.
Boom,
Shaka, Expander Band, Weapon Stash. That is, all the 2021 games. I think there's the ones we want to focus on. Should we just talk about Infinite now, and then, since that's a 2021 game?
Yeah, we can.
And then we'll get an update from Zach on what he's been playing, and then we can sort of
this podcast
wrap up on the year, I guess.
Wrap up on the year.
I mean, we have got a list of other shit we've been playing, but I think we've probably talked about that.
Yeah,
during the year.
Our discovery list, as we said, stuff that wasn't from this year that we got round to finally playing this year. Of note, I suppose, is Deep Rock Galactic as being kind of the standout thing that Zach and I have stuck with quite a bit, and Hyrule Warriors.
Yes,
Rocket League.
Age of Calamities. I mean, we always play Rocket League. Yeah, River City Girls, good mention there.
Yeah,
really
the sequel coming out soon. Skipped news section.
That's
all we've got is like River
summer
City
of
Girls
next year. That is targeting. And also my least favourite Final Fantasy game that I've played, Final Fantasy 12.
Wow, that's an award.
Of the mainline Final Fantasies, this is my least favourite.
Gosh, what's your favourite? 8.
Probably 8.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So yeah, we're gonna go to what you've been playing, but keep in mind, contenders for Game of the Year. Factory Town, because it's the only factory game. And then, where are we looking for you then, Rob?
I don't know, like somewhere between Psychonauts
And
Forza maybe, and maybe Halo. Like,
well, let's talk about Halo then. Unless you want to do some speaking, Zach.
Not especially. I think the reason the Halo is going to have to be in Rob's Game of the Year, like, contender thing is just mainly for content, right? Because it's one of the biggest games on that list by quite a way, almost.
Yeah, that and Forza, and I mean Scarlet was pretty big, but it's not like,
but not necessarily the best content in that case.
It's a chunk game.
Yeah, it's an actual big game. It's an actual AAA game.
AAA, right? Of which we're not
in a year where there were
two, just isn't quite.
In a year where there weren't
AAA, double A.
In a year where there weren't necessarily that many AAA games
for us,
because of the pandemic.
Well,
because it's delayed.
Yeah, because like they haven't got round to making games for the new consoles yet.
The only reason we got Halo because it was delayed from last year.
Yeah,
yeah, true. So Halo Infinite, I finished the campaign now, and I've put in a reasonable amount of time after the campaign as well, just mucking about in the open world because it lets you do that. So,
I mean, how annoying is it that you're going to have to play the campaign again to get things that you missed?
Not that annoying in my case, because I don't think I missed. There aren't many main mission areas that are actually locked off. But yes, you're right. You could have missed things in those areas. And then you're unable to return to them because there's no replay mission option here. It's like you play the game through and you're dumped back in the open world. You can't go to the first two missions at all, for instance. You can't go back to those.
Does it have like a New Game Plus where you start the campaign over but you keep some of the stuff that you got?
I don't think you keep your upgrades. Like, because so you like, hey, new to the
upgrades.
Yeah, new to Halo upgrades. You get four equipment that you hold on to at all time rather than having to pick them up off the floor, and you swap to them with a slightly awkward press right on the D-pad and then press one of the four directions to pick your equipment, which I never truly remembered what was where.
It's just like Rocket League text chat though.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You just have to remember the ones you care about.
Well, yeah. For me, it was like, well, you want the grappling hook, right?
Yeah.
Like so that's right. That's all you need to know. If you've used anything else, just double tap right, and you go back to that.
And again, that's why it's right, because
it's what you want.
Remember.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been mixed up. So you can get upgrades for those, and it's which is a weird system in itself because it's the whole thing with those is you can go around the open world and you're looking for these things called Spartan cores, and they're just like skill points in a way, like upgrade points, and you find a number of those. And then when you've got enough, you can upgrade your abilities, yada, yada. There are far more Spartan cores on the map than you need. Like, by a long way.
Right. It's just the Deku experience.
Kind of, yeah. Like, I upgraded everything in, like, the first third of the game. And then...
Are there 900? That's all of that.
No, there aren't 900. There aren't that many.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, there definitely aren't that many. But there's far more than you need, which makes like hunting them kind of a weird, pointless, thankless task other than just going for the
But what do you get
achievement.
at the maximum? What do you get when you get all 900?
I don't know.
Do you get a literal poop? Like in Breath of the Wild?
Literal poop. What do you get?
You get Hestu's secret gift if you get all 900, which is just like a Korok seed, except it looks like a poop. It's like a golden poop, and it doesn't do anything. It's just like that's what you get.
Isn't that just the icon for like the seeds in Hyrule Warriors? Is this golden poop looking thing?
No, I think it still uses the same icon.
Okay.
Can you cook anything with it?
No, because it's not a real item. It's like one of those key item things that can live in their own special menu.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like you get little poop. They're like fuck you, collectionists.
Yeah.
So that's slightly strange. It's far too many of them. And they are often just go-to place. There might be some guys guarding them. Kill all the dudes, go up to chest, press X. You get your thing.
That is why there's too many of them, though. The same reason as Breath of the Wild. It's like they want you to be able to get everything, but they also made it so you can't accidentally miss too many.
Yeah, that's true. Like some of them are really good though. Like so, most of them are just like out in the world somewhere. There's a few dudes around them. Not that interesting. Some of them are have got like bespoke caves built for them. So you go in there and there's actually like a nice environment with some slightly different thing. And there's not that many caves in the game per se where you're actually doing these fights. So these kind of stand out as one of the
Are they natural formations or
natural formations?
Okay.
Yeah, these ones are often rather than more natural-ish as much as
Right.
as much as things are natural on the Halo rings, I guess. So they sort of stand out as because there aren't that many huge problem. There's not that much in the way of environmental difference in this game. It's not just the biome thing, which is well documented that there's only one biome in the world. It's it extends to interiors as well. So you're only really ever, other than the very start of the game where you're on a banished ship.
you're only ever in Forerunner?
You're only ever on the ring or in Forerunner structures.
Right.
And all of those Forerunner structures look identical.
Cookie cutter, like the ships.
Oh yeah. I mean,
the original
cookie
game.
cutter's the word. There's repeated architecture.
Well, actually,
in many of the missions, you'll come across the same rooms. You'll come across the same layouts of things.
Halo 1 did that famously, didn't it?
Yeah, but it's. I think even Halo 1 in places was more creative with how it did that. This really does just I'm in dark blue land now, and here's that corridor I saw in mission 2, and I'm now in mission 9, and it's and there's another set of the same room, and it's
It's like Mass Effect 1.
Yeah, there's a laziness to the design of Halo Infinite that really bothers me. It's this has been in development for so long.
And you look at
and it's a lot of it's sure they've got the combat right. Sure, the open world is actually quite nice. Sure, they've probably fixed quite a lot of issues with the previous games in terms of how it actually plays. But you don't get the set piece thing right? Because the first 3 Halo games, and even Reach and ODST, there are standout moments in those where you're just oh, okay, cool. Now I'm doing this thing. Here's the tank battle, the big tank battle at the end of Halo 3. Great. Here's the Banshee fight in Halo 2. Great. There are things that happen and there are moments. Infinite doesn't really have that.
The moment.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's missing all of that. Okay, sure, towards the end of the game there's a section where there's a lot of vehicles available to you and you're trying to get down this stretch of road to the point where the level is literally called the road, and you're just and it's okay, this is your attempt at doing that. It doesn't pull it off in the same way that previous Halo games have, and so that ends up making me feel a little quite fairly disappointed. They focused on the open world aspect of this game, and in a weird way that also is problematic because it makes the whole game a bit one note.
That's the issue, yeah.
It's you're always going to place, you're always fighting the same enemies that you've seen from the start of the game. It doesn't really ramp up in challenge particularly. It doesn't really mix it up too much because the weapons are even right at the start of the game. Pretty much every weapon is available everywhere. Right, you just come
Halo into Just Cause.
Kinda, yeah. Well, you just stumble upon a settlement. It's this guy's got a skewer, one of the new sniper weapons, and it's that's a power weapon. I can just grab that. Almost the first encounter, it's there's a rocket launcher. It's the rocket launcher isn't a moment anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's just everything. It's they've taken the multiplayer, where I suppose the weapons aren't really moments anyway.
Right. It's more like multiplayer. Yeah.
But they've rebalanced all the guns for single player. They don't do the same amount of damage to the Banished and that they do to other Spartans in multiplayer. It is a different feeling game in terms of the effectiveness of weapons. They still act the same. I've done it again. They still act the same, but they do different damage and stuff like that, making a lot of them kind of useless. Honestly, all you really want is a battle rifle, and you can get through most of the game with just that.
Yeah. Do you get enough ammo for a battle rifle if you want to do that?
So yeah, because I think I mentioned this last time. They changed up how ammo works in this.
Oh yeah,
so
you can either categories.
You can either pick up weapons of the same type and it will refill like you were before, but there are these buckets, and it's do you want kinetic ammo? And it's great, all your human weaponry will work, except for snipers because they count as power, and power is an ammo type. So if you want to refill your rockets, you can find a power bin, which are quite rare,
right?
And then get your rockets back. You're more likely to just stumble upon another power weapon,
right?
And it's so I don't know. It's
So you can use a rocket launcher ammo for your sniper rifle.
No,
Oh,
not quite the same. So like once they're in the gun, they are rockets. But if I had a rocket launcher, I could go to the power bin and get more rockets. If I had a sniper rifle, I could go to the power bin and get more sniper bullets. And these things deplete. They're finite. They will run out. But yeah, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, most of the time I just always made sure to pick up the battle rifle at the base before setting out to do a thing, and pick that out, or the nearest equivalent, like, which is the Stalker rifle, which is effectively the replacement for the Covenant carbine.
Right. I mean, to be fair, I would do that in Halo 3. I would just get the battle rifle, and if I ran out, I'd use the carbine. Yeah. also, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it ended up being 25 hours of that for me.
Yeah, fair.
But that's the thing. 25 hours, right?
Yeah.
That's a long campaign. Like, admittedly, the actual campaign content of that, probably not that long. Most of that was me just traveling the world and trying to do stuff. But of which, again, I wish there was a little more, right? It's a little bit like, all I'm really doing is going to place, fighting Banished, maybe destroying a thing. That's it.
And when we say Banished, we basically mean Covenant.
The Covenant, yeah.
Which is good, because that's what the original Halo got right, was like that combat loop and like the combination of basically the equivalent of elites, which these days is
the brutes.
Is elites plus
but there are elites as part of the Banished
with their like grunts and jackals or whatever. Like,
I mean, I think annoyingly, like, they've eroded that difference, though. Like, the grunts are still kind of the grunts, and the jackals are still kind of the jackals. But the brutes and the elites, like, brutes can have shields.
They were pretty interchangeable in Halo 3 because they needed to replace the elites for story reasons in Halo 3. So they made the brutes like the elites.
But the brutes started out not having shields, right? And just being more bullet spongy.
Yeah. They were different. They were very different.
Whereas now they're not. Now you get brutes that you can take out in like 2 shots with a battle rifle.
Yeah.
And it's like, so they're really easy to take down. Blue level elites are still shielded, so you still got to work a little bit to take those out, but
still get the red level ones, or
you still get the red level ones and the white level ones.
Right,
there are definite levels. You still get like the big, like, there are brutes that are in like big red armor and have like mega shields and
they're on a guard like ridiculous.
Yeah, massive hats, and those are kind of a nightmare to take down. But aside from that, like, all of the sort of creatures tend to sort of blend together a little more, and I don't know if that's made better or worse by the fact that they can wield more weaponry. So it's not like the brutes always use brute weaponry. The brutes, you'll sometimes come across brutes like wielding, or quite a lot, wielding the UNSC shotgun.
Oh,
for instance. Weird. They'll be using UNSC weaponry.
Weird. That's unusual, isn't it?
You'll find grunts with sniper rifles.
I guess that's the replacement, because that's what you would get with the Flood could use everything, which was really weird. And there was that, like, they would have shotguns, like,
right? Yeah.
And then there was always the one fucking Flood with the rocket launcher. That would just be like,
the brutes can use UNSC rocket launchers every now and then, or like, or brutes will snipe now because they like using the skewer as a sniper weapon.
Oh, really? Instead of just the jackals.
You still get the jackals with their stalker rifles. There isn't like an equivalent of the beam rifle anymore, right? So you don't really come across those. Like,
they were weird. Those Covenant beam rifles. Yeah.
So it's all a bit, I don't know. It's a bit strange. A bit all homologous. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Homogeneous.
Homogeneous, maybe. Yeah.
Like a lump of all the same stuff.
Yeah. And then as I sort of was talking to you briefly, like before we did the podcast, it's like, I think that extends to the story as well. Given the weird place the universe was in, they have chosen to effectively sidestep it all. Yeah,
well, maybe not a bad idea, given the bad situation that the story got into.
Like, I mean, it was in a weird place, but they've kind of like, they've skipped forward like,
and been like, no.
At least a year, probably, in real time. And all of the interesting stuff has kind of already happened. Like, the AI war has happened.
Forget that.
Yeah. The Banished have entered the fray. Master Chief lost at some point, hence why they're on this ring, and he's been, like, unconscious for 6 months.
Right.
The UNSC lost the war against the Banished at the start of the game. None of which they really go into. We've somehow locked down Cortana, or something has happened to
Even
Cortana
though she's
during
like
all
the
this.
biggest threat ever.
Yeah, something just happened.
Yeah.
And minor spoilers for like what happens at the end of the second mission before you even get to the open world. you get a new Cortana.
Yeah.
The weapon, as she's now known. And there's some mysterious circumstance around. She was supposed to lock down Cortana and then delete herself, but she didn't. So you've still got. So she's still about. And effectively, like, the game's story is basically one of just trying to tell you snippets of the backstory. Like, not huge amounts of detail here and there, just kind of what happened in the mission that led to the end of Cortana or whatever. And it's mostly told in holographic flashbacks that, like, this is their thing now. Like, there's data echoes in the air, and as you walk into them or walk near them, they somehow get get projected into your head, and it's not really very interesting. It's a real cheap and nasty way of doing story, like, because it doesn't involve me.
Just think of all the crazy shit that was happening in Halo 2. It's like, fucking Covenant invades Earth at the start, and then you're like all down, and then twist, now you're playing as like Covenant guy. But there's like Covenant politics going on that you never heard of before, and then you like find these heretic guys,
sect,
and then the guilty spark is back, and then what the fuck, and then they go and they find a new Halo, and it's like, holy shit, like much stuff happens.
And then the Brute Rebellion,
and then they High Charity, like the Covenant capital city, and you're
and
there,
all of this is happening around you, and you're in it.
Flood invades the capital city of the Covenant. You're right there, and like the amount of shit that happens, even though everyone's disappointed in that because it was like, it didn't have an ending or whatever. And it's like,
who cares?
The journey was great. It's like that had a good fun. I mean, I'm not saying it's the greatest story, but for a blockbuster, basically, like, I don't know, if you compare it to something, I
mean, if I was to take out the backstory stuff, the story effectively boils down to: there's a bad guy. He's a bit angry.
He's a bad monkey.
He's a bad monkey.
Donkey Kong to shame.
He realizes Master Chief is alive and wants to have an honorable fight with him. Which, question mark, whether that fight was honorable or not. But hey,
you already had the big brute fight in Halo 2 as well with the fucking brute guy.
With Tartarus.
Yeah, and he was the end boss.
Meanwhile, there's something else on this ring, never fully explained. There's some other bad person on this ring whose intentions are never fully explained, and you have to fight there's basically the end boss, and you beat them. The end. And that's, like, if you boil down the core storyline of what you as a player are doing, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Like, so...
Sometimes.
Yeah, so I end up feeling like this is possibly the weakest narrative that a Halo game has ever had. Like, even next to Halo 5 and to a lesser extent 4. But it plays nice, and it's nice that they're trying to do something different, but this isn't my Halo, yo. This isn't...
Well, no.
This isn't my Halo. This isn't what I'd like...
But you've
not
been
very
way more on board on 343 stuff then, because I was like, what's even the point after Jump Bungie? But
sure,
there you go.
And I can get behind that viewpoint.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with the people that have that viewpoint. It's like, but I think Halo 4 and 5 at least have their moments,
positive moments.
Yeah, there are memorable things about those games. And it's like, I wonder, like, am I really going to remember Halo Infinite for its campaign? And it's like, I'm not sure I am, honestly, years from now.
Are you going to play?
But the multiplayer...
Game of the year.
Freaking sweet! Yeah, I mean, that might be what sways it, honestly. It's like, not Halo Infinite campaign. Halo Infinite multiplayer is
free to play.
Freaking amazing.
Also.
Yeah. It just continues to be, and they've updated it now, so like there's a lot of playlists available now, so you can, if you want to play Team Slayer and nothing but Team Slayer, like a lot of people do, you can do that now.
They have.
Yeah,
cool.
They've added that in. They've added Fiesta playlists as its own thing, and free for all game modes, and there's now a lot more choice in what you're actually doing, and it's all the better for it. I still think the quick play playlist is my favourite because it juggles between a bit of Slayer, a bit of Oddball, a bit of Capture the Flag, and feels the most Halo to me. I think that's where it's at, but it's just incredibly well crafted. Honestly, I think it needs more content. Like, it needs more levels for sure. But it's a very well crafted thing, and it's just a lot of fun. And I can't really add to what I said last time on it, really. It's one of the best things I've played this year.
But is it the best thing you played this year? We have come to the end of talking about games from this year. Unless Zach's been playing a game from this year, which I highly doubt.
No.
A surprise
DLC.
A surprise entry.
Oxygen not included. All right. Well, shall we switch? What have you been playing?
I've been mostly playing, not including DLC. I've also played some Satisfactory because I was finishing the Christmas event thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out you don't get shit for finishing the Christmas event thing. It's like it makes it you're progressing up through this tech tree where you're you're essentially compressing the Christmas items. Like take these 2 baubles and mash them into 4 baubles somehow. We're not really going to worry about that. But like
they divide.
you combine each of the stages of the Christmas thing, and it makes more and more complex things. Which is why I was saying I was just like, I'm not going to scale this up. I'm just going to go with what I started with, and then however much of the end product I make, I'll just go with that, and then do other things while I wait for it to make however many I need, which I did. I just ended up like running around and exploring the world and collecting some of the hard drives to unlock the alternate recipes. Whereas really I should have been working on my actual factory, because I was like 90% of the way through rebuilding my whole steel factory in a new design that was better laid out and made better use of the resources that were next to it and all that stuff. And then I stopped playing for a while, and then the Christmas thing happened, and now it's going to be real difficult to go back to that, because I've just forgotten what the hell I was even doing, and it's not all turned on, so I can't even like look at what's happening. I have to actually look at it and then be like, okay, what recipe is set in this machine? What do the numbers say? What was I trying to do with these numbers? Because like, where does this belt go? Oh, it goes up here, and then it goes into this splitter, which goes to 3 different places. And what percentage of the output was I sending to these 3 different places? I don't even know.
The numbers, Mason, the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Although I think, from what I do remember about what I was doing in that factory, I'd specifically designed it so it basically, at each stage, each different item that factory was making, I just designed it to be that it could theoretically output that item at the maximum input rate it was getting. So basically, if any one of those items backed up, it wouldn't actually affect the throughput of the whole factory. So like the end products will come out at some speed that's not maximum speed, because some of the earlier stages will be filtered off to other things or to storage. But then eventually, if everything backs up, it will ramp up to full speed on the end products. I think I'd specifically designed it that way because I was just like, the numbers get too complicated in that game at a certain point. You're just like, if you got a belt that has 240 iron on it, just make 240 irons worth of whatever you're making, and don't even bother trying to split that or anything. And then route that belt into 240 of the next thing. So yeah, that's my steel factory problem. Also, the other problem with that factory is that it needs plastic, and I have my first like oil refinery segment because I've only just reached the oil tech stage essentially. So I do have plastic, but then I'm going to have to build like a truck line and a truck station and somehow get that plastic into the factory.
Build another truck.
But then I also want to build trains, which is like the next unlock that I'm currently working on, which is what I need this steel factory to make the parts for, to build the trains. And I'm like, so do I do a truck line to get the plastic, or do I wait until I have trains and just build a train instead? But then I'm going to have some amount of plastic, so I'm going to have to like manually ship it. And then then the Christmas thing happened. But yeah, you don't get shit for finishing the Christmas thing. You complete the last production target thing to make the giant Christmas tree stars, and then the giant Christmas tree in your base gets a star on top, and that's it. Which is kind of disappointing. I mean, the advent calendar was way more worthwhile. Just logging in. I mean, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it on the day or anything. You can just wait until the 25th has passed and then open them all. Like a real advent calendar. But yeah, get some free shit. That's probably the more important part of the Christmas event than anything actually Christmas related.
There's an event running in Halo Infinite right now. I have no idea how it works. Like, it says do the event challenges to get stuff, and then doesn't tell me what the event challenges are.
Do something.
Yeah.
Just keep playing and hope that something pops.
I've got like level 1 out of 10, and that's it, and I don't know what it wants me to do.
Weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I finished the Christmas thing, and now I'm going to leave the Christmas factory there just to see what happens when the Christmas event ends. See how much of it just disappears or whatever. presumably only the actual Christmas trees and maybe the Christmas items. I feel like the Christmas items might stick around because you can just put them into the resource sink and get tickets. Because everything in that, well, almost everything in that game, you can just dump into the resource sink, which is convenient. Because again, if you're doing the thing that I was saying, where you're just like you're designing your factory to maximum output of a belt and then just not worrying about it, you can at the end of that just have a like overflow that just dumps everything into a resource sink, and then you're just getting tickets.
Oh, I see.
Because it doesn't. There's no like resources don't run out in Satisfactory. It's only a throughput rate.
I see.
So you can just at a certain point, every belt you just have an overflow into the resource sink and just delete it. Apart from for the like nuclear waste, because they thought of that. They were like, oh, we can't just let people delete nuclear waste because that defeats the whole purpose of having nuclear waste.
Anything actually polluted.
But then that leads to the well, from what I hear, because I've never got to the nuclear stage in Satisfactory, but I hear that led to the obvious problem of like, well, what the fuck do you do with this nuclear waste then? You just put it in a storage container, and then because of the way radiation works in Satisfactory, the more radioactive stuff you have in a small space, the more dangerous the radiation is. So essentially, you're just going to make like a death zone somewhere on your map where you're storing all the nuclear waste.
You find the biggest hole you can.
Yeah, I mean that would be. I mean, there are mods for like here's a nuclear waste bunker that's specifically designed for storing nuclear waste, so it doesn't create any radiation, which is again bypassing the whole problem.
Still got to build it though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but that's not difficult or anything. You just plonk it down.
There's like, do they have like a half-life on the radioactive waste? So it's occasionally, so it eventually becomes benign, and you can like shove it in the sink.
That would definitely be kind of cool, except realistically, nuclear waste doesn't degrade as quickly as that.
No, but
they, the last updates to the actual sort of tech tree side of Satisfactory, they did introduce basically something to do with the nuclear waste. Like you can just reprocess it into plutonium, and then make plutonium waste, which is even worse. But or the other thing you can do is not do that and just convert it to plutonium, and then that can go into the resource sink. Like if you don't fully use the fuel, you can actually just delete it.
If you don't go all the way to the end of the chain, you can just dump it.
Yeah. So that's a bit weird, but I don't know. There are probably better ways to solve that, but it's like it's so endgame. I mean, I've never got to that point. I'm still. Once I get to that point, maybe I'll be annoyed. But yeah, that was Satisfactory. And then mainly I've been playing more Oxygen Not Included DLC. I was going to talk about it again, mainly because like I kind of totally forgot to mention one of the main new mechanics, which I sort of got into earlier, was like the radiation mechanics. And one of the main new things they introduced, which I initially thought was going to be super annoying, because it's like radiation, obviously you have to constantly go into the radiation overlay, right, to be able to see where the radiation is, and then it's got this weird like radiation sickness effect where you can't see that.
Right.
It's just like it's a number that's going up inside your duplicate stats, and then when it reaches a certain level, they're exposed to enough radiation to get radiation sickness or whatever. So I figured that was going to be quite annoying. But I mean, like many of the sort of things you would think would be annoying in that game, it's actually kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say it's too simplified, but it's like it's toned down in such a way that it actually is not too bad to deal with, and in some ways actually useful. Like the thing about radiation is that the exposure rate for the actual duplicates, they can survive quite a lot. It does cause an annoying animation. Like every time they're exposed to a certain amount of radiation, they have a specific animation for being like, oh shit, radiation is hitting me.
Oh, right.
Which actually, like, that's the most annoying part of it, is like they have to play this animation, so they're wasting time.
Right, yeah. They like sort of walk around almost like going,
yeah, almost.
Deus Ex poison,
But only like what? It's not quite once a day. There's obviously some kind of hidden countdown to those kind of animations, and Oxygen Not Included, because you get the same thing where like if they walk through water or whatever, they get the soggy feet debuff, and then when they step out, they have an animation for that. But that doesn't play every time they stand in water. There's like a certain period after it's played once, where before it plays again.
It's got a cooldown.
Yeah, essentially. So yeah, the radiation effect is similar to that, where it's just like this extra animation, which can be slightly annoying, especially if it's like, well, getting into the uses of radiation where I was like, I first thought it was annoying, but it turned out to be useful. So one when they changed food spoilage so that food's properly spoiled and everything, one of the things that you used to do was like have a food storage room that's in carbon dioxide, so that's sterile. But now you have to refrigerate that as well. And I'd previously said that like the way I did that was using the Weezewort plant that just creates cold, essentially.
Yeah.
It consumes heat and creates cold. And in the DLC, because originally the Weezeworts were free, like in early versions, like before the actual game came out, the Weezeworts were just free. Then near launch, they basically nerfed them to make it so that you had to feed them. You had to give them some amount of input to get this basically free cooling. So that was like the first nerf. But then in the DLC, they sort of nerfed them again, where the Weezeworts now output radiation.
Oh.
So
irradiate your food.
Yeah, but the thing is, so that's annoying for when they walk through the door to the food storage room, they get hit in the face by the radiation, so they have to play the radiation animation, and then probably the doors open behind them, so all the like heat is leaking out. So it's like it slightly reduces the efficiency of cooling your food storage. But then, of course, what radiation also does is kill germs. So it's actually an advantage to have the Weezeworts in your food room, because then if any germs get in there, they just get killed by the radiation.
Interesting. Can you give like a dude like a radiation suit whenever they go get a food then?
Well, you could, but then that's a whole other animation as well. They have to go through the radiation suit checkpoint.
So can you make like a room of like just connected ducts where you've got your Weezewort room and it's like...
Well, yeah, but I mean, having focused cooling, like putting all your Weezeworts in one place is
and then using ducts to...
Yeah, just
like,
move the heat around.
Yeah.
That is kind of an idea. But I mean, like, because like I said, initially when I saw that they output radiation, I was like, oh shit, that's going to ruin the possibility of putting them in the food room, because then all my duplicates are going to get irradiated. But it's not actually enough that it matters to a duplicate. But it does still kill the germs.
I see.
And then I used that on one of my other asteroids, because one of the other asteroids had like a crashed satellite on the surface that was putting out a shit ton of radiation. But then like... because radiation degrades with like how many blocks it passes through, essentially, and like different materials are more or less penetrated.
Yeah.
So like on this planet, I was like, oh, I can build my bathrooms immediately below where this crash satellite is, but behind enough tiles so it's not a dangerous amount of radiation, but it will helpfully sterilize my bathrooms, so I won't have to worry about the food poisoning germs getting out so easily.
Radiate that poop.
Yeah. Which is also helpful because now you can use poop essentially for oxygen with the sublimation station that takes polluted dirt and then just makes polluted oxygen out of it. But then if that has germs on, all the germs go into the air. But then you just build that in the radiation zone as well.
Radiate that.
How handy.
But yeah, so radiation is like not as dangerous as you'd think it is, except obviously there are these high radiation sources like the crash satellites, and then obviously you just build the lead suits, so they have it's like the Atmos suits apart from with lead, which also gives another reason to actually have lead.
I guess, yeah.
But yeah, you just have a radiation suit. But then there's the more complicated mechanics of radiation. So one of when they sort of extended and rebalanced the tech tree, one of the types of research is essentially radiation research, where you have to build little radiation collectors that collect radiation from the environment and then like shoot it into the building, and then the building uses the stored radiation to actually do the research points. And that's like that's one of the new mechanics of the radiation, is like storing it into these, they're called rad bolts, but because they're
Rad.
yes, because it like physically shoots them, you actually have to like path them. Like they have little reflecting like mirrors almost, where you shoot the rad bolts in and then shoot them back out in a different direction. And like the distance they travel, they degrade over time. And if they hit someone, then that does like tons of radiation damage. Which is really annoying, because when your researcher is, for example, standing at the research station that uses radiation, the port where the radiation is meant to go in is like at head height, like next to them. So you kind of can't have the radiation come in from the right, because then it would pass through where they stand. You have to come in from the left, where the port is not obstructed by people standing in the way. Which I fucked up once, where it's just like, my guy was trying to research, and I'd set it up so that the radiation only tried to refill the machine once he'd depleted it a bit, so I didn't notice for a while. So he depleted it, and then he was just standing there trying to research, but then radiation would just hit you in the head constantly because I'd misaligned the shot. Until he eventually nearly died. Except they don't really... When their health runs out, they go into, like, incapacitated, where you can still pick them up and take them to the hospital, basically. Which is that... But I didn't notice until that alert popped up. Where it's like, oh shit, he got incapacitated because radiation was just shooting him in the face constantly. And then you get the reactors, the nuclear reactors that, like, as I described earlier, kind of complicated because they don't work on exactly the normal systems. Because, like, as I said, they have a pipe input for coolant, so you put water in, but no outputs. Because what it does is, like, it heats it up inside the building and then just, like, vents it. So, like, it just vents hot steam into the environment. And then usually you capture that with the steam engines or whatever. But the trouble is that this does get into, like, wiki territory where it has, like, they're not exactly hidden mechanics, but it's like you wouldn't necessarily understand unless you
surprise mechanics,
unless you looked at it very precisely. Because it's like the mass of fuel that's in the building influences how hot the steam comes out of it. Because it's like it's using the thermal mass of the fuel, transferring some of that to the water to turn it to steam, and then venting it. But it does it dependent on, like, the coolant input rate is dependent on how much fuel you have, because it's heating up the same amount of water for less mass. So in actual fact, it's very difficult to run the reactor by just letting it get full naturally. Like, it can take like 200 kilograms or something of enriched uranium, but that's, like, way too much to handle. It, like, puts out so much heat that's almost impossible to actually manage.
Right.
So you do actually have to, like, create some automated system to limit its fuel input flow. But you wouldn't know that unless you either experimented or just read the wiki to find out.
So it'll just melt down, right?
Yeah, so it's weird because you'd think, like, the steam output might be the problem, but the steam output is sort of handleable even at maximum fuel input. But what it also does, which it also doesn't tell you...
Can't you just put control rods in to moderate the fucking neutrons?
But I guess these are, like, the whole idea of Oxygen Not Included is this such weird, janky survivalist technology,
right,
which somehow still lets you build a nuclear reactor, but don't worry about that.
Oh, okay.
But the other problem is, like, the steam is manageable, but the other thing it outputs that it doesn't tell you about is it just also shoots out nuclear waste onto the floor. and when I say nuclear waste, it's actually a liquid, so it's just like this big pool of nuclear waste builds up at the bottom, and that has so much more heat than even the steam because it has a much higher heat capacity. So, and then you have to, because it's at the bottom of the room, it's really far away from the steam engine input, so the heat doesn't transfer very well. And that's the actual problem. So you have to, like, the design I've come up with basically has, like, a little door at the bottom of the room where when the nuclear waste goes up to a certain level, it just opens and just, like, poops it out the side into just, like, a pool that's in vacuum.
You can't use any of that heat then.
Well, you could. Like, I'm planning that you might be able to reclaim that heat by building a separate heating loop that then dips, like, a pipe through that nuclear waste pool.
Multi-cycle.
Yeah, essentially. Unfortunately, you can't. My original idea was to use the nuclear waste directly, like, suck it up into a pump, because it has, like, a really good heat capacity, which is rare. Like, water is, like, your basic.
Yeah.
Most of the game, you're going to use that for coolant, and that's got, like, 2.4 on the heat capacity. And then the late game one is super coolant, which you have to get some very rare resources to make, and that's, like, 8. But nuclear waste is, like, 7. And I was like, wow. Oh shit, that's actually really good. But unfortunately, they kind of prevent you from doing that, because whenever a nuclear waste goes through a machine,
it breaks it.
Well, it doesn't break it immediately, but it leaks out, so you, like, pools of nuclear waste all over the place, and then sometimes if it's in storage, it degrades that. So it's not, you can't really
use it as an actual
as a fluid,
working fluid. That would be crazy.
But then, much like Satisfactory, what are you going to do with this? Because in the end, giant pool of nuclear waste. I mean, obviously in Oxygen Not Included, you can just vent it to space. As long as it's a liquid, just pump it into space and it disappears. Once it gets a solid, you might have more of a problem. Except not really, because then you can just sweep it into a pile. And
does it fall back if it's a solid then? Is that the problem? Or because they're not like guns, you can just shove it into space?
Well, no, that's the weird thing. Like, liquids and gas, if you vent them into space, they just disappear. But the solids, they just sit there.
Huh. They don't like just keep.
They don't just fly away.
Yeah.
But then the reason for building these nuclear reactors is not so much even the heat. I mean, obviously there's a shit ton of heat, so you can use that to make electricity. But it's a huge amount of radiation, which then obviously you can use the radiation collectors to turn into rad bolts and then shoot that into either research, but probably at that point of the game, the nuclear-powered rockets. You shoot the rad bolts into the rocket engine and then just use that to power your space flight, which is late game-ish.
So it's not really the rocket propelling itself. You're literally firing stuff into it to give it momentum.
The rad bolts go into a storage tank inside the rocket, so
okay.
It's still technically a rocket style of shooting it out the back. But then the other weird thing that you can do with radiation is mutate plants. So if plants are growing in a high area of radiation, when you harvest them, they have a chance to get a mutant seed, and then those can have different effects. Except it's kind of annoying because, firstly, it's random. So you just have to grow a plant next to a radiation source forever and just keep harvesting it and hope you get the seeds. Because the mutated seeds can't multiply themselves.
Oh, I see.
So if you're looking to get one specific mutation, you can't really do that. You just have to keep growing the original plant over and over and over and hope you build up a stock of that one specific mutation you want.
I see. So you can't then... Was it propagate that one?
Yeah, you can't propagate the mutated seed.
Yeah, okay.
And then the other slightly awkward thing is mutated seeds have to grow in radiation. Not nearly as much as to cause the mutation, but you have to have some amount of radiation in the vicinity for them to grow at all.
That's weird.
And then, so the mutations aren't... I haven't really... I mean, I think I've seen all the different possible mutations on this one type of plant I was growing, because I'd set it up to just run forever while I was doing other things next to one of the crashed satellites. So I didn't even have
a pile of seeds.
Yeah, basically. And then I just researched those to see what the mutations were. And, not many of them are particularly useful. There's obvious ones where it's you can grow the plant in a wider range of temperatures, or you can grow the plant in a narrower range of temperatures, but it outputs more.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a almost risk-reward kind of thing. But the weird thing is, I think all the plants have the same set of mutations. So, there's probably 10 different things they can have, but each different plant can still have those 10.
Okay.
But there's one specific plant that you can grow, which has always seemed a bit cheesy. I don't know, like it's not finished in some way. But there's this one specific plant you can grow, which is only actually used to make medicine, but it grows basically for free. It has to be in an atmosphere of chlorine, but it doesn't actually use any inputs.
Okay.
So it just sits there and grows.
Huh.
Which is I mean, when plants are wild, that's just how plants work, but they grow 4 times slower in the wild, which is the penalty to letting plants grow wild. Whereas if you farm them, you have to feed them, but they grow 4 times quicker. But this specific plant, you can farm it, put it in a farm tile so it grows 4 times quicker, but it still doesn't actually use anything. And that was the plant I was testing the mutations with, because I was just I'll just set that up and it can just run because it doesn't use any resources. But one of the mutations you can get is the lysine mutation, where it basically crossbreeds with meal lice, where it gets lice on this other plant. And meal lice is a food.
Right.
But basically what that means is the mutation is that when you harvest the plant with the lysine mutation, you just get some free meal lice. But this specific plant I'm talking about doesn't cost anything to grow. So it's basically infinite free food.
Huh. Yeah.
But then you obviously have to grind to get the seed to make this one specific mutation of this one specific plant, and you do have to grow it in a radiation environment, which is not 100% free, except for these crashed satellites.
It's not that common, but
in the long term, you theoretically could make an entirely free food source using this weird one plant and one specific mutation. But it would take a long time, because generating these mutated seeds is annoyingly, it depends on the ambient radiation. And I'm using these crashed satellites because they put out quite a lot of radiation. So you grow the plants right next to the crashed satellite to get as much radiation in them as possible. But it's not nearly close enough to the maximum that would... The higher up the radiation is, the better the chance of it dropping the mutant seed.
I see.
So even with the crashed satellites, it's still probably not even like a 20% chance of actually mutating.
Okay.
So if you really wanted to do this, you probably would have to build the nuclear reactor and use that radiation because that's way stronger. Which I was thinking about doing. So the whole... I went into a sandbox map to try out this design for a nuclear reactor to see if... First of all, to see if I could even control it. To be like, it's just putting out so much heat, it just destroys itself. So I eventually worked out a design that probably will be manageable. But then I was like, and can I also harvest the radiation? Probably. Like if I have it in like a sort of a pit, and then the walls of the chamber are made of gold because gold is really easily penetrated by radiation, so it doesn't really shield it at all. And it's in a vacuum, so the gold doesn't transmit the heat out. But then you've got like on one side, I've got the radiation collectors to make rad bolts for a rocket, and then on the other side, I've got space that I can theoretically put a farm and expose it to a shit ton of radiation. So yes, the radiation system is quite weird and like not as dangerous and more useful than you would think. But that is one of the main new systems. It's not...
Sounds like the major new
Well, I
system.
mean, apart from all the space adjustments.
Sure, but this sounds like the biggest in a way.
Oh, and there's also like a new animal related to radiation, the beta, which is just a bee that eats uranium.
Okay.
It's actually weird because it's like it eats uranium, or it picks up uranium, shoves it in the hive, and then it converts it into enriched uranium.
Not honey.
No, obviously.
But green honey.
But the thing is, like, the conversion rate of the bees is way higher than, like, the uranium centrifuge. So you don't actually want to centrifuge uranium yourself to make enriched uranium. You want to just feed it to bees.
Radioactive bees!
And they're meant to, like, sting you. Like, they're meant to be aggressive.
Of course.
They're meant to be aggressive. But for some reason, the ones that I found aren't. And again, this is another one of those...
Tame bees.
Well, they're not tame exactly, because you can't actually tame them in the way you can with normal critters. Like, there's no interaction with, like, the stable or whatever. So they're always just wild. You can sort of manipulate them to create new nests by, like, moving one of the babies to a new location where it can't navigate back to the original nest. It kind of automatically builds a nest itself.
Yeah, all right.
So you can breed more, essentially. And they're meant to be aggressive and stingy, but I've never seen it happen for some reason. And, like, this is another one of those mechanics where where nowhere in the game does it actually explain this. But apparently if you feed them, or if you pump carbon dioxide into the room, so the atmosphere is carbon dioxide, they go to sleep, like sort of like real bees do with smoke or whatever.
Right.
So you can kind of smoke them up, and then you can harvest the hives without them attacking you. But they've never attacked me. And there's not any carbon dioxide down here. I just walk in and just take the shit out of the hive and it's fine. And there's a specific achievement for it as well, because it's like harvest the uranium out of a hive without getting stung. And at first I was like, well, I'll build doors around the hive, and then I'll have a detector that detects how many animals there are, and then when all the bees are flown away, it will just close the doors, so I can just walk in there and harvest the shit. And it's like, that worked, but then every other time I've just walked in there and just taken it, and the bees don't seem to care. I'm just like, why is this working?
Maybe they're like, oh, you've got us figured out, so what's the point?
I think it might have to do with, because I built the doors around the hive,
right?
The hive counts as being in a separate room.
Oh, right.
So they don't kind of detect that you're in there.
They don't even know.
It's weird. It's a weird system. But again, game doesn't really tell you that there's this whole thing with carbon dioxide. Technically, it does sort of. Like, if you look at the bees, it tells you that they will consume carbon dioxide at 100 grams a second with no output. So it's like you can feed them carbon dioxide, but it doesn't tell you why or what that does.
Right. You have to figure that out by trying to
and
make
also,
an analogy with real bees.
And also, you wouldn't have even been able to necessarily test that, because the environment that bees spawn in is a really cold environment. And all the carbon dioxide just liquefies in that cold temperature.
Oh, wow.
So you couldn't actually have a carbon dioxide atmosphere where the bees naturally exist. Because it would immediately drip onto the floor.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's their clue.
Well, maybe, but not really. Because it's like... I mean, maybe you would have figured it out by saying, like, oh, look, this is a really convenient way to get rid of tons of excess carbon dioxide. You just feed it to these bees.
Yeah.
Which is a problem in my main base. Well, actually, hydrogen is more of a problem in my main base at the moment. I'm currently just every time I just have a little alert device connected to my hydrogen tanks, and every time they get full, I just basically put it into a physical canister and just put it on the floor, which means I've now got like 10 tons of hydrogen in canisters on the floor, which is a bit of a like exploity way of dealing with it. It's effectively infinite storage, except without infinite storage, which you can do. But I was like, I don't want to build an actual infinite storage. I'll just do it this slightly manual-ish way that's really awkward, and I probably should just build an infinite storage at this point.
Yeah. You could just put your radiation in the infinite storage, surely.
I mean, I guess. But yeah, I think the trouble that I'm having now is that I've reached a point where I might have to stop playing because it's just running so badly. No, I don't think my old ass system can quite handle this much new shit and all these different planets.
Upgrade time!
Because the thing is, it's fake different maps. Like it's actually running just one big map. It's just hiding the other bits while you're not looking at them.
Sure. Yeah.
Because sometimes you can see icons or effects that are like outside the map you're currently on, because it's like you're seeing through the fog of war to the other map.
Yeah.
So it's obviously just running one big map, and I would assume that it probably is bigger than one of the original game's maps. So it is doing more, and I don't think my system can handle that much more. It's just the frame rate is getting real low.
So isn't that a weird problem with the factory games genre in general?
Well, yeah.
That, like having an old machine is gonna real scupper you.
But as we've also said several times, the problem with factory games is it's not graphics card based, it's CPU based, which is not as easily upgradable.
No, that's a new machine right there.
Yeah. And it's surprising how long my current machine has managed to keep up with these factory games even.
I'll tell you what, you've done well.
Yep.
You have made it last. Although you can't run Halo Infinite, so that's a problem.
Well, that's more of a Windows 10 thing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, also the requirements probably are way higher.
The requirements for Halo Infinite on Windows are quite high, like surprisingly high. Like I don't know, like the graphics card requirement is a 1060, but it's still it's a 1060 graphics card requirement, so it's so not as scalable as you might have thought, I guess.
No, I guess. And I think that's more or less what I've been playing. I was trying to remember if there was anything. I mean, I've been randomly running through Deep Rock Galactic with Rob sometimes, and sometimes by myself, churning out more. Because by myself, I've started playing the Engineer, which is the class that Rob plays when we're playing together.
Hot potato.
Yes. Except I've been using the proximity mine, so I don't get to say hot potato. I get to say a lot of weird things like bug traps. And like,
oh, really?
He has completely different voice lines for setting up the prox mines. And they're more useful than I thought they were going to be.
Really? Okay.
Because the thing about them is that they don't... It's not a single explosion is the main thing.
Oh.
They sit there and then they can explode like 5 or 6 times before they actually run out.
Oh, that is interesting.
And if they don't go off at all, you can pick them back up. But if they've gone off once, you can't pick them back up. You can leave it,
yeah. That's okay. That's better than I thought. I immediately assumed there'd be a one and done, and it's like that's not very effective.
Unless you have a lot of them, then that would sort of compensate.
Yeah.
But
compared to my plasma nades that I just chuck and explode 7 times.
Yeah. But yeah, they are slightly useful because you can cover different areas, of course. And then I've also in my slightly different way of playing the Rob's Engineer, I've been using the single directional turret rather than the 2 turrets.
Oh, okay.
Which is sort of useful. I mean, I wish there was a part in the turret upgrade tree that just gave it more ammo internally. Not ammo total, but ammo you can put into the turret.
Yeah, that might be
Because you have to go back to that to refill it so often. It just eats ammo.
That might be nice.
And I also did that stupid achievement for grinding a pipe for 2 minutes.
Oh, did you?
Because I was like, I coincidentally I had a refining mission that was in the salt caves, and those tend to generate big flat rooms. So I was like, this is the perfect environment.
Did you make a half pipe?
No. I was like, I'll just loop the pipe all the way around the room and then just spiral inwards, so this pipe just covers the entire room round and round and round and round.
Blimey.
And 2 minutes is a fucking long time.
Yeah.
But also because it's flat, you don't gain any speed. So you're moving at about the slowest speed you can when you're grinding the pipe, which limits how much pipe you have to make somewhat. But yeah, so I just like loot. But then the trouble with that is that you're spending all this time building a pipe, but the enemy waves are still coming,
Bugs are still
and you're going to
coming,
run out of ammo eventually. So you're just like, you are technically in a sort of a race against time to get this achievement done. But yeah, I did eventually get it. And
unless you can, as I said, you can build like a half pipe and sort of. Can you get it to sort of like swing between the two
I don't
sides?
think you can. I think if you're going forwards, it always goes forwards. It just goes really slow uphill.
Right.
So you can't like stay still or just sit in a dip. But yeah, so I did that achievement. And then the actual problem with it is after I'd been there for like forever setting up this ridiculous loop of pipes, you still actually have to finish the mission as well.
Yeah.
And that means you have to build this whole pipe. Well, you either have to dismantle the whole pipe and rebuild it short, or just build this whole ridiculous loop of pipe and connect it to one of the pumps.
What did you do?
I just built it. Because I kind of predicted that I was going to have to just connect it up, so I'd left a gap to one of the refining points. So at the end, I could just link it up and then just build the whole thing. Which is also, because in solo you have the robot that helps you, you can just tell it to build the pipe. And then it can continue doing that even while you're fighting a wave or whatever.
Right.
So that made it take slightly less time. But still quite a lot of pipe to fucking build. I think I've heard every single one of the different engineer barks of building pipes on every one of those bits of pipe I had to build. But I got that achievement done. There really are quite a lot of, like, several of the more awkward achievements in that game really are kind of, well, they're not as time consuming as that one probably, but they are more awkward. I think naturally, as always with multiplayer games, the worst ones are the ones where you require like a full, well, not necessarily a full team, because it usually just requires multiplayer, like every dwarf in the mission, so 2 would count.
Oh, but it doesn't count it for you, just you.
Yeah, but it doesn't count it by yourself. But then like those are one like there's like ride on the drill dozer and every individual dwarf gets 15 kills while you're on the drill dozer.
Oh, okay.
Which
that could be a little tough.
Yeah, it could be a little tricky because you'd have to. Yeah, I mean, you'd be in the wave as it's tunneling.
Yeah,
and you'd have to be shooting back at them, and each individual dwarf would have to make sure that they actually get 15 kills.
The engineer in particular isn't very long range.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably easier if you turn up the difficulty so the waves get bigger.
Oh, sure.
So you have more targets to shoot.
Yeah, okay, good point.
But then there's also a similar one for like riding on a silicate harvester and getting kills.
Right, you've attempted that before.
Yeah, we attempted that for a minute, but like, well, it's quite hard to stay on the silicate harvesters because they just have their mind of their own and they'll just like climb up walls or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like trying to ride the mule as well. That one's slightly easier. Stay on the mule for 30 seconds or whatever. Do that in multiplayer.
I think I got that one.
Yeah. But yeah, those kind of achievements are slightly awkward. Mainly for getting the kills more than anything else, because you have to distribute the kills between everyone who's there.
I've got my number. I'm stopping.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so that's what's going on with Derek.
Yeah, I'm trying to get more people in, so we can have a
full team.
So we can have a bit of a crew going.
Turn it up to difficulty 5.
Yeah. I have to unlock lethal mode first.
Well, or maybe you don't. I don't know how it locks you out of that because like I have it unlocked.
It's an assignment.
Obviously.
Yeah, it's an assignment.
Well, yeah, I know how you get it, but I mean, I have it unlocked. So,
but if you're the host,
if I hosted and triggered that mission, could I put it in difficulty 5?
Could you put it in 5? Yeah, interesting.
Because I mean, it seemed like I could start a deep dive before you'd got to the point where you could have unlocked a deep dive before you'd promoted.
Yeah, don't know, probably.
But I think we try that, and it said that everyone in the team has to be promoted, but we'd only that was only after I triggered the menu.
I can't remember. I suppose we can log in with me as another class and see what it does.
I mean, yeah, that's true. Because it doesn't count that is individual class rank, not your overall rank that matters. But we haven't been doing deep dives. We haven't been doing the new missions because we've still got Rob's assignments to do. Still forever assignments. Always assignments.
Yeah. Get those blank modules.
Well, I mean, yeah. Now that Rob can actually get the overclock modules,
although we really should get that smart rifle.
Yeah,
see what that's like.
Yeah, because I haven't got that on my solo engineer either. I've got actually, I don't think I have the breach cutter yet. I think I've only done the second primary, the SMG one.
It's all about those triple spinning wild lasers.
Yeah, that does look way more useful than its standard firing method.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
We haven't done a boss fight, I think, since you got that, have we?
No,
I want to see how
haven't.
much damage that will do.
Yeah.
'Cause it seems like that'll be real useful if you can get the spinning blades and just position directly on the butt of the enemy as it's doing an attack, so it's staying still.
Yeah, it's great because the spin slows it. The spin's an overclock, and the spin slows it down.
Yeah.
So it stays in place for longer. But then you can one of the normal upgrades just adds 3 beams to it vertically, so you end up with this wall of death just spinning around. And it doesn't do a huge amount of immediate damage, but if you land it on a bigger enemy, it will start chipping it for quite a while.
Yeah, I definitely want to see how that works with the bosses, because that's been. It's like when I've been playing the engineer by myself. I mean, the shotgun is more useful than I thought it was at range, because it's not great at range, but it's all right.
It doesn't nearly do as much damage as you want it to at range.
But I did naturally. I chose the upgrades that are tighter choke angle or whatever.
You choked it. See, I don't do that because
you're just going for damage output.
Yeah, because you're there. You can take it.
Yeah.
Normally, when you've got long range weaponry, you can take out everything else, and I'll worry about the stuff that's in my face.
Yeah. But yeah, I was using the choke angle. But then that second one, the SMG, the electric SMG, it's more powerful, better at range, but you have so little ammo.
Yeah.
It just eats ammo so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not really usable. I've used it a few times, but it's it's a challenge.
I think the overclock I was trying to use for it was sort of compensating for that a little bit. Because I think I had an overclock that I think it gave it more electric damage, so it had a better chance to shock, and then the shock does damage over time, and then you combine that with the standard upgrades that chain the shocks to adjacent enemies.
Okay, yeah.
So if you can upgrade that electric damage output, you can kind of effectively use less ammo.
Right.
And also, obviously, shocks slow enemies a lot, which helps to keep them in place for your turrets to shoot and all that kind of stuff. But yes, I've been playing Engineer by myself. Me and Rob have been continuing to play and continuing to fail more than we should.
Oh, it's just because moments of stupidity, right? It's Zach's dead, but he died from the cave leech in the sky. So I just charge over there like an idiot, completely forgetting that it was a cave leech thing, and I just get grabbed, and it's oh well, that's game over.
Yeah, that was a particularly dumb one.
That was a really dumb one. I just totally forgot that that's what killed you, and just ran over there and was oh yeah, and now I'm dead as well.
And I did get a nice death cam of that, where it's just oh look, here comes Rob, here comes the cave leech arm sticking down from the ceiling to grab him.
Oh, it's really stupid. But I did find it very funny.
And that's that. And that's probably the end of this podcast, I guess.
It's a podcast.
So, Zach's Game of the Year, Factory Town.
I guess.
Factory Town.
/ Oddie DLC. Best DLC of the year.
As much as I love Halo Infinite's multiplayer, I'm leaning Psychonauts. I've decided.
2.
Yeah.
I mean, good old Tim Schafer. He's
he
all
sometimes
reliable.
succeeds.
This time, it took a while.
It took a while, but they got there.
Yeah.
And with special shout out to Hyrule Warriors, because if it had come out this year, hands down.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. We have succeeded. Play Hyrule Warriors.
Hells yeah.
It is fun times. Cool. Thank you for joining us for our annual GOTY-ish.
GOTY-ish, yeah. A GOTY-ish.
Mainly a standard cast. We're of a standard length. So, Christmas treat for you.
You don't have to listen to us for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Only the regular.
Only the regular.
Not that much debate.
And now that E3 isn't a thing anymore, we no longer have stupid length podcasts. So, hooray.
We're calming down in our old age. Is that what it is?
We are mellowing. But join us in a couple of weeks for another couple of hours of podcast. See you then.
Bye.